up, everybody? It's Nick Caputo, the creator of the Caputo Method of Holistic Ease. This is the Grow Up from the Garden podcast, episode 14. This is being aired live with my boy Rob. What up, Rob? Good to have you on here, bro. It's been a long time
Peace.
coming.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we planned this for a while, but life gets in the way and can't do much about it. But yeah, thank you for having me on.
For sure, bro. Yeah, divine timing tends to be fashionably late.
For sure. For sure.
So the topic, guys, that we wanted to get into today for you guys is social media versus reality, with not so much of like the vague like concept of that, but more so like a specific application of that, like the difference between understanding something from social media like intellectually and actually understanding it from your own experience. And for both of us having decent sized platforms, talking about concepts that are pretty out of the box as far as like the masses are concerned, we have audiences that tend to form opinions and concepts for themselves based on the stuff that we teach and speak about. So we kind of just want to note the difference of, listening to what we say and understanding what we say, and then actually like applying that to your life and learning from the application. So Rob, if you want to
Right.
add to that.
Yeah, definitely. So I've just noticed that you know, there's a tendency to put people on a pedestal based off of what they put on social media. And social media is kind of like a highlight reel. Not a lot of people are fully transparent on there as well. And I just wanted to provide clarity because I get a lot of questions about, this is specifically for me, like building muscle on like a liquid diet. And I just want to be fully transparent and say like, I didn't put on muscle when I was doing liquids. I've been training since I was like 14. And so that was kind of like something that was gradually, I was able to put on the size that I did, not because of liquid. So I don't want people to just see that, I'm fit and then they see that I'm doing like liquids and then they automatically assume that you can do that. I'm not saying you can't, but that's just an example that I get a question about a lot. And I'm sure we'll get into, the details of that. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here and just talk about like intellectually understanding something versus experientially, because that's something that's like, 6 to 7 chakra, like Ajna to Sahasrara. Like when you intellectually understand something, you're able to regurgitate it and you're able to, speak about it. But until you experientially try something, it's very difficult to really truly get that full feeling of what it means to go liquid or what it means to dry fast or what it means to do anything. And a lot of people will do things just because they see that someone else is thriving, and then they'll hop right into a fast and automatically assume that they're going to feel good. And like, I don't know about your first experience of fasting, but for me it was brutal. Like
It
I
was
started
definitely
off,
brutal.
yeah, like I started off a 3-day water fast, like just right into it. I didn't prep for it, I didn't do anything, and it was brutal. And I'm looking online on these people that are like thriving, like no food, no water for a long time, and I'm like, all right, there's something that I'm doing wrong. And then I think that's what's really important to touch on, because if you're not gonna really try something for yourself, it you can make up these stories of how you should feel based off of what you read instead of how you're actually feeling. And it's important to really touch on how you're actually feeling in this moment as opposed to what you're reading online. So yeah, I don't know if you want to go into like your first experience of fasting. I'm sure people already know, but yeah,
Yeah,
mine
there's a
was
couple things I want to add about it too. So I mean, we're not actually also saying to just like go on a 60-day juice fast out of nowhere because,
for
you
sure.
see us doing it on Instagram either. The experience will give you an understanding that is different from hearing our experience about it. But at the same time, I mean, when you see people like us or people, anyone who's sharing information on Instagram, you also got to understand that Instagram is more or less a marketing platform. If you're looking to just learn everything you need to know on Instagram, you're not going to. And like, especially like, at least from my content, like I offer courses. I have a how to fast course and textbook and different things to like help you prepare. And I break it down into different levels so that you don't kind of do what I did and jump right into stuff you're not ready for and then end up going back and, doing this like really like violent pendulum swing of trying to super detox and then like not being able to sustain it and then doing it again. And instead like gradually building up to what you're ready to do. So, I mean, it's not to say that listening to someone else's experience doesn't have value. It can make your experience, save you time and like despair of the difficulties of making those mistakes. But either way, some of them are going to be inevitable. You're going to fast for something that you're not ready for on this journey at some point, and you're going to binge. It's going to happen. And that's the only way that you can really know why you shouldn't binge after a fast. I can tell you till I'm blue in the face, but you have to like do it. You have to make the mistake yourself to really like know.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too. That was a really huge learning experience for me last year, especially because I was practicing dry fasting, and I was doing it like 20 hours a day, easing myself into it. I did a 3-day dry fast, and that was okay, and all of that. And then I did my 16-day liquid. That was the first time I ever went over like 10 days liquids only, and I binged like right after that, and honestly, at first I was like upset, but then I realized that you need to have that contrast to really, know why you shouldn't do that. Because had I not done that, I wouldn't have known really what it meant to binge. And like, I was just unaware of, what that contrast felt like. And so I feel like that's a really big thing for me too these days is like, the things that I say, I also practice the contrast of that, not practice it, but those things do come up. And I try to be fully transparent with all of that as well. Because I don't want to give people false expectations, and like you said, the social media is really like it is, you want to hit the algorithm right, so you post certain things, and you want to make sure that people are reaching out, for the right things, and that you're reaching the right people. But at the same time, it's like some of that stuff could be tailored to not express the full truth, and
Exactly. And they
that
only give you
yeah,
2,200 characters.
yeah, yeah,
You can't
exactly,
you can't
exactly.
explain everything you need to know about liquid fasting in 3 paragraphs. It's impossible.
Exactly. And that's why services are really important. That's why, in order to sustain your services, obviously you have to reach a good amount of people. And, diving into the whole like marketing side, because I did like the past couple of years, I've been doing a lot of like marketing business and e-commerce and things like that. So like I know how the game works in terms of
And
like
you've been
targeting
pretty fucking
audience.
successful.
Appreciate you. Yeah, it's definitely been a learning experience. And it's crazy because, you start you take certain experiences and you can apply them to everything. So the trial and error experience that I went through, like e-commerce and marketing and all of that, it was the same trial and error, that I went through like fasting. And I'm starting to see how everything's like interconnected and how you need to have those contrasts, because those contrasts are like bumper rails. When you have those bumper rails, you can get to the pins. And so it's like that. That's kind of like how I'm seeing things. Before it was like I would get emotional or something, when I do hit those bumper rails, but then I realized it's just putting me back in the right place. And so with that being said, like I do get that, the full truth isn't always going to be able to even be explained because of the, character limit, but also because of just the algorithm, the psychological side. You obviously want to promote your services, but you don't want to always talk about like how, like the shitty feelings, like because that might turn
Yeah.
people off, so you're trying to
Yeah.
like express this feeling of
Find
like
that
how
balance
much, yeah,
of
how much joy you
transparency
get.
and like promotion
Yeah.
at the same time.
And I
Or
think like nowadays
yeah.
people are really tapping into that, and they really like authenticity, because it's easy to just go on social media and post your highlights, but it's another thing to be like, vulnerable and like just being completely honest, because that's going to affect your business. The eternal
Yeah.
Tao
And I
cannot
mean
be
people
told.
people buy from
Exactly.
people, so they want to know who you are?
Mm.
It's like you
Yeah.
wouldn't want to take a course with me if you don't even know me and you don't know who I am. Like, why would you want to
Mhm.
learn from me? The
Mhm.
more you show of yourself and your actual personal journey, the more people are inclined to want to learn from you and your journey.
Yeah.
But at the
No
same time,
doubt.
it can also, you can only show so much about yourself on Instagram, and
Yeah.
that's like the main thing of like reality versus like social media. It's like if you know me in life, like from real life, you know me a lot more, or like me and you actually haven't ever met in person, but
Mm.
like we've talked on
Mm.
the phone a lot. Like you know more
Mm.
about me than most people on Instagram.
For sure.
And I
For
mean,
sure. Yeah.
there's things, and probably vice versa. But I mean, there are things that like aren't relevant in my life to my Instagram. The things that I advocate for, like
Mhm.
what I'm doing with my personal life is not really totally relevant. So I mean, either way, like it's not like you're ever going to show all of you on Instagram. It's not like anyone can show all of you on Instagram.
Yeah.
If I wake
Yeah.
up one morning and I'm feeling like shit, the last thing I'm thinking about is let me post this and tell everyone. And I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's like the last thing on my mind. I'm like, all right, what am I doing? I'm doing an enema. I'm doing something. I got to like get this right. I'm
Yeah,
not like
exactly.
thinking like, oh, let me go tell everyone because they're waiting to see how I feel this morning.
Yeah, and a lot of social media is emotionally driven. Like people love,
Mm-hmm.
when things are polarizing, and that's why like some of the content that we post is, people like it just for the fact that it's polarizing. And so sometimes we
Definitely.
can get caught up in that polarization, and we want to just post things that are like, wow, no one's ever talked about this, or like, wow, and that could in itself, sway our truth. And so yeah, that's kind of like what I wanted to touch upon here with being authentic in social media versus reality, because yeah, it's like there's just a lot of, I don't know, that I'm picking up on energy wise. There's just a lot of especially lately, like I feel like people are like, and you've talked about this, like demonizing things, and like because they assumed it was supposed to be a certain way, or they assumed you were supposed to be a certain way. And that kind of brings us into the topic of different like lifestyle choices that we've made um in the past, and currently, because I know a lot of our community is like on that liquid raw wave, and most of them are vegan. There are some that um will eat and consume animal products. And so I kind of want to touch upon that too, because I want to be fully authentic and, share my experience, because maybe that'll help other people as well. So,
Definitely.
yeah, I
That was
mean, I can
something
just,
that I wanted to talk about with you too on here. I forgot about that when we were like preliminarily talking.
yeah.
Yeah, me and you have both been experimenting with the animal spectrum, the
Mm,
animal side of the spectrum as far as food goes, and we've both been experiencing some pretty cool things. So I
yeah,
definitely wanted to, talk about that and share that on here.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, I can kind of start off and talk about like my journey and like, what I've experimented with. And then you can kind of tune in and tap in and wherever you
Okay.
want.
Before we get into specifics, I do want to note
Mm,
one thing is that like let's say I post something that's a little bit different than what I traditionally post. Right? People tend to like jump to conclusions and assume that everything else that I've posted, I don't believe more or I don't like practice anymore. So like, just because I'm experimenting with raw milk and some eggs doesn't mean that I'm not in alignment with the breatharian path anymore. Doesn't mean that I'm not still on the breath work. Doesn't mean that I still don't advocate for fasting. Doesn't mean that I still don't like fruit and green juice. Like all of those things are and herbs. All that stuff is still here. This is just a new tool to the toolkit. And for some reason, people think that as soon as you start messing with animal products and you jump over that vegan fence or go out of that vegan box, that like you throw the whole journey away. And
mm,
I mean, I can see how some people could draw those conclusions based on some people in the past who are like ex-vegans that like speak against fasting and speak against like everything they ever taught. I don't really see it that way, at least as far as my journey. Like all I'm doing is adding a new tool to the toolkit, not throwing away the rest of the toolkit for this
mm.
new tool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely resonate with that, because for me, again, like we were talking about earlier, is the contrast. And, for like the past 6 years, I was plant based only. And, you know, I, I have a good feeling of what it feels like to be void of animal products for an extended period of time. And
Same.
so, the only way for me to, experientially understand and understand what it feels like, is to have that contrast. And so for me, it was like when I got SIBO back in like late 2018, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So that's basically when you have an overgrowth in bacteria by your ileocecal valve, which is the valve that connects your small intestine to the large intestine. So that was, the neurons weren't firing properly and they were opening and closing at random times. So I would always alternate between like diarrhea and like constipation, and it was just bad. And that was like at the first, my first I guess thoughts of like even trying animal products, because I was reading online. I didn't end up doing it, but I was reading online that people were, consuming raw egg yolks and they were healing that. And, me, because,
Mm.
I was reading stuff online saying like, the vegan path is the only path. And like, I shouldn't be consuming, animal products at all. I kind of put that off to the side. And I eventually did, I don't want to say I cured the SIBO through like extended fasting, but it definitely helped a ton. But there would always be moments where like, even if I would consume like half of an orange, I'd be like, bro, like I don't know what's going on. Like I'm feeling bloated off of like half an orange. Like, and I'm seeing people like half my size eating like a ridiculous amount of of fruit and they're completely fine. So I'm like, all right, there's got to be something that, I'm not doing right now. It's either my gut bacteria or like something like that. And so, when I saw you were consuming the raw goat milk, and you were talking about the infection in your foot, I was just like, all right, well, I'm just gonna try at least. I want to try everything at least once. So I'm just gonna try it. So I
Exactly.
went to the yeah. That's like my whole thing is like try it at least once. I'd rather say oh well than what if, and that's with everything in life. I
Facts.
wouldn't
And I
have,
like to
I
speak
wouldn't
on
be
things that I know. Like, how
yeah.
am I going to say don't eat animal stuff if I've never done the animal stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm willing to take that risk because for me, it's like I need that contrast. Otherwise, I'm going to be, always saying what if. And
Yeah.
so,
And I only trust my own science.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I
And
am the scientist. I need my own trial and error for me to actually believe shit. Because there are so many
yeah,
things that I've believed from other people over time, whether it's from Taylor or Arnold Ehret or Dr. Sebi or like a lot of these dudes that
for
like
sure.
I used to be like, this is fact, undeniable. And then like through my own experience, kind of proven myself wrong in those beliefs.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
And it's not to say that none of those people have anything real in their philosophy, which they very much do. But a lot of, the law, like thinking that what you learn from someone else is absolute like universal truth is just like not not it.
yeah. And that's the thing. You're intellectually, understanding someone else's truth, but you're not experientially understanding your own.
Exactly.
So that's kind of like it all ties back into like just self experimentation and what works best for you. And that's been like a huge lesson for me because now like I don't do it, but I know I can eat. I've done it a few times where I just eat a ridiculous amount of fruit just to see where I'm at, and it's actually crazy. Like I feel no bloating, nothing, and this was just incorporating the raw milk. So that just tells me that something with my gut bacteria or something was just like not allowing me to just consume fruits specifically in large quantities without me feeling like ass. And now, I can eat bowls and bowls of like blueberries, strawberries, and like I'm totally straight. And I can still do my Nali Kriya. Like it's been crazy. It's been crazy. So it's making me rethink everything that I thought I knew about gut bacteria because like I've gone through it. Like I'm not going to sit here and say like it's the path, but and I'm not going to sit here and say that that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life is just consume these things. But it's just like you said, another tool in the kit to just experiment with that and really get that contrast because otherwise, you can hear about how you shouldn't consume raw milk, how you shouldn't consume raw meat, organs and things like that. But how do you know that you shouldn't? It's just like, is it because it's written on a piece of paper or because you experientially felt that you shouldn't be consuming that? And that's also it ties in with intuition too. Like obviously, if you're if you're truly feeling that you're not supposed to eat it, then don't eat it. But me personally, it's just I felt a calling to it. I needed to have that contrast, and so I kind of tapped into that realm. And I'm honestly grateful for it. Like another thing that really kind of geared me towards that was consuming locally because I realized a lot of things that I was consuming when I was, vegan was like it was just out of the country or just like, yeah, it just wasn't local. So it wasn't even sustainable. And I'm over here preaching like self sustainability. And obviously, breath is the highest form of sovereignty. Like we know that. But, I want to be able to, you know, like not impact, you know, whatever it is. Like I don't want to impact people's energy because they have to now cultivate these things and transport it around the world and all these things just because I'm against consuming certain things. So that's like another thing that really geared me towards trying to consume locally because when I do consume something, I want to make sure that there's it's just not impacting other how should I say this, like there's not as much of an impact in terms of like transportation and environmental reasons and like all these things. So yeah, that was kind of, I don't know if that kind of geared you towards that, but that was
It was a
another thing
part
for
of
me.
it for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm all for the whole, eating local thing. And I mean, from the beginning, even when I first did like advocate for like veganism or whatever you want to call it, a main thing that was always like a trending topic in all of my content was let's stop supporting the corporatocracy. Let's stop funding major corporations that mass produce anything. I was
Mm,
even, even when I was on the breatharian, I mean, I still am, but even when I was like highly promoting breatharianism, my main argument was that all the food is mass produced. And it's most,
mm,
everything that you buy at the grocery store is basically fake food. And I still agree with that.
for
Really
sure.
local food that's grown by local farmers or, local people is really the only way to get the realest food you could get.
Mm,
So, I mean, as far as like, the whole kind of like hypocrite concept goes, how like, basically everybody who's saying not to do anything is a hypocrite. Like the whole veganism, like moral high ground, like moral pedestal bullshit is like all hypocritical because, and I realize this in myself too. Like, okay, I'm saying like, you should be self-sufficient and everything is, all within you and we shouldn't support factory farming, but then we're supporting factory farming of plants and I'm buying mangoes from Whole Foods in January. Like this just doesn't make sense. So
mm,
a big part of that was that. And I mean, when I'm back in Jersey in the winter, there is no fruit that grows here. Unless I'm getting frozen blueberries that grew in the summer from a local place. That's really the only fruit that I'm getting here that's local. So
mm.
right now, pretty much that's the only fruit that I eat. It's like berries
Same.
that are frozen from the summer. And everything else is pretty much just the raw dairy. And that's, what's been around. I would say the staple of my diet right now is milk. I'm just drinking raw goat milk, like a half gallon a day minimum, and that's just like the staple of my diet. In addition
Mm,
to that, I'm just messing around with raw duck eggs. Probably have like 5 or 6 of those a day on average, and then like a couple pieces of raw cheese. I like to take like a little piece before I eat or drink anything.
mm.
I just feel like everything digests better when I do. So, I mean, overall, what I would say with the local thing is like, that's what I'm eating because I'm here. And when I was in Nicaragua, like not even a month ago, all I was eating was fruit and raw eggs because that's all I had. The lady next door, like right down the street from my house in Nicaragua, had her own chickens and they were running around and they weren't debeaked and they were eating fruit scraps. She was like she had a fruit stand and just like the chickens were around eating the fruit scraps and shit.
Mm.
Like, when you buy a fruit there, like, you eat like the banana, you throw the peel, the chickens are eating it or like whatever. So I was like, okay, I'll have some of those eggs. And she's like, yeah, son de mi amores. Like, like she loves those chickens. Like they're like her loves. They're like her children.
Mm,
So I was like, okay, these chickens get love. They're running around. They're eating fruit scraps. Like I'm totally about this. I'll eat these. And, they're local. The chicken lives right there. Like I literally can see it running around.
mm, mm.
And, the fruits are local too. So, I mean, what's local is what I eat. So when I'm in the tropics and fruit and coconuts and maybe raw eggs or like whatever is kind of the best stuff that's available local, that's what I'm going to opt for. And I mean, I
Yeah.
guess it also depends on how I'm feeling and what I'm doing. Like for those of you who follow me pretty extensively on Instagram and know what I'm up to lately, how I hurt my foot on the dirt bike in Nicaragua and now I had to take antibiotics for the infection so it could heal quick. I now am kind of on a different route. I'm more so leaning towards kefir and more so leaning towards the fermented stuff again, like I was when I was trying to fix the bacteria from the athlete's foot stuff back in the day, like, a couple months ago when I first got on the dairy wave. So, I mean, there are different times for things and different, like, reasons to apply different things. And this is why, like, on Instagram, you can't really give someone like a blanket statement because, like, I've never had two clients that I recommended the same exact thing for.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I've recommended drinking pee to like a million people, but like that's not the only thing I've recommended to them. And like, even then, like some people I recommend doing it at specific times or using it in different ways. And it's like it's so specific to the person. And even for myself, I've done specific things for specific times and never done really one thing consistently forever.
Yeah. And I think that's huge too, is like, you know, it's good being consistent so that you can get a good feel of what it is that, you're experimenting with. Like when I went plant-based, I was plant-based for like 3 or 4 years before I even was telling people like, what, like giving advice.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and this is something that like for me too, with the animal products, like incorporating it back in, I'm not gonna sit here and recommend you do any of that. It's like I'm sharing my experience. This is what I did. This is what it's helped me with. And you can choose to do what you want to do with that that knowledge, because the only way to acquire wisdom is to apply the knowledge. And so that's what I really, honestly, that's what I use social media for. Like when I'm listening to other people, is just to gain that knowledge and then choosing what I want to apply and creating wisdom out of that. So Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not going
I
to
would
sit here
even
and say you
say
should or shouldn't.
from Instagram, I would say I just go for ideas. I just look for
Yeah.
things to look into further.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's like, the whole thing that I'm kind of experimenting with now is, you know, CO2 and, a lot of exhales and doing things on exhales. Um, it's something that I did during my there's a practice called Angamarna, and basically you do exhale push-ups there. And I noticed, after you do that, there's like a certain kind of high that you get when you're
Definitely.
doing those kinds of things. And so, I kind of fell off of that practice and was just doing like other random stuff with breath and you know, it's it's something that, yeah, like you said, to get ideas from and like not take as the holy gospel truth. It's just like, take what you want, experiment with that, and see how it applies to your life. What benefits, what doesn't benefit you, and kind of going from there. So, yeah, that's true. Like definitely getting ideas in that sense. So,
Yeah, and
but
understanding yourself. Like the more experience you get, the more you understand when to use what.
yeah, and it's like just adding things to your toolkit. So,
Exactly.
like you mentioned before, it's just like, you know, how do you know this isn't going to benefit you, or how do you know this is going to be a detriment to your health? Um,
And it's like
I
you
mean,
can't use a
intuition.
hammer and a screwdriver at the same time.
Yeah,
Each
yeah,
tool has its own time and place. When you have a screw, you use the screwdriver. When you have a nail, you use the hammer. When you're constipated, you fast. When need bacteria, you drink kefir. Like certain things, like when you have yeast overgrowth, you pound the bacteria. When you
hmm,
have different problems, you use different tools.
yeah,
When you need different solutions, you use different means.
exactly, exactly, and that, I think you and Ketzel were talking. That's his name, right? Ketzel.
Yeah, Ketzel.
Yeah, you guys were talking about like high vibration and low vibration, and like how there's an application for both. Like you don't always want to be high frequency, and you don't always want to be low frequency. Like there's a time and place to apply all of these different things. And I think that ties into subjective truths as well, because some people will deem consuming animal products low vibrational or low frequency, and some see past that, and they're just kind of looking at what you're emitting from within, and not allowing the external to determine your internal frequency and internal vibration, and what you're resonating with, and what you're expressing at the time. So yeah, that's just something that I've been keeping in mind too. Is just like the importance of the application of where you're at. And like it's like if you're at the point where you've done a lot of fasting, and you know you can give yourself space to experience density again. Like you need that contrast. I shouldn't say you need it, but it's definitely beneficial to have that contrast, because
I mean, you're gonna give it to
um,
yourself anyway. It's kind of
yeah,
inevitable.
yeah,
Everything always comes in waves, no matter what spectrum
exactly.
you're observing.
Exactly. And that's something that's been a huge lesson for me too. With all of this, is just like, um, you know, accepting where I'm at, and also, forgiving myself for things that um I used to be hard on myself for. Yeah, what up, Fab?
Definitely.
Fab, what a character.
My
For sure.
ninja.
Yeah. I mean, if you're cool with it, I have a ton of questions that people were wanted to ask us, and we can kind of go through that. I don't know if is there anything else you wanted to tap into before we did
Let me think
that?
for a sec.
Yeah.
Um, that's an interesting thing. I might as well just say that. When it comes to like people saying when they talk, I think
Mm,
it's super interesting. It's kind of like an ohm. It's like you make that sound and kind of just like ring your nervous system with like that vibration to like
mm.
tap you back into like thinking about what you were thinking.
Yeah, yeah, kind of returns you to that space. Yeah, I noticed that I
And we
always go
use it
like,
as like a negative thing. We like
yeah,
demonize the in between words, but it's like it's kind of useful.
yeah. It's a tool. It's a tool, and that's
Exactly.
yeah. So yeah, that's super interesting too. Because yeah, I just noticed that I'll either go like or I'll do a lot. I'll do a lot of
Mm,
that, especially when something resonates.
yeah,
Like
definitely.
a lot of that.
You're like vibrating it in. You're like
Yeah,
laying the foundation
integrating
for that
that.
to like get accepted. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Another thing I wanted to mention on this topic is demonizing things isn't the only, for lack of a better word,
Mm,
problem.
mm,
Idolizing is the extreme on the other side of the spectrum that a lot of us don't acknowledge either. So, I mean, a big thing with um, like when it comes to us, like putting us on a pedestal or like putting someone on a pedestal that you see
yeah.
online or that you're following their journey, like you don't want to idolize things either. Like so many people idolize Dr. Sebi or idolize Arnold Ehret or idolize like me or idolize Taylor and like or you and whoever. It's just as detrimental as demonizing something. And I mean, basically everything is you, right? So everything is reflecting you and everything is reflecting necessarily, I guess, parts of you. You know, like none of your reflections are actually the entire you. They're just reflections of parts of you. It's like looking at like a mirror that's like, you know, like a bunch of like a room full of mirrors. Each one is kind of like they're all you, but none of them are all of you. You know, like a
Mm,
two-dimensional mirror can never show all three-dimensional you with all of your emotions and
mm,
feelings and thoughts. Like it can never do that. So the same thing with like other people and other things in your life, right? Nothing can actually reflect all of you back to you, but things reflect parts of you back to you. And I guess the entire collective reflection of you would be like the whole world. So the universe as a whole is the complete reflection of you, maybe. Um, and basically, like when we demonize something outside of ourselves, we are essentially demonizing a part of ourselves. And when we idolize a part of ourselves or idolize something externally, we are basically not allowing space for us to be accepting other parts of us. So this is kind of like, you know, where we get pride, like lusting for the idea of yourself or lusting for like the physical body, like your own physical body. And this is where, you know, kind of leads to everything else, you know, as far as insecurities and like a lot of diseases stem from these original like feelings and emotions and identifications with the physical body. So a lot of this is really, you know, you're idolizing yourself. You're idolizing your physical body. You're idolizing the idea of yourself, even. And
mm,
this is something that doesn't allow you to be open to other tendencies or other potentials that you have. And in my opinion, from my experience on this journey for as long as I've been on it, I really see balance in all spectrums being ideal, but really just being open to the fluctuations of every spectrum. So it's not necessarily striving to only stay in the middle of every spectrum at all times, because that's what's the point of life if you're doing that. The oneness is not experiencing anything without the illusion of separation. You know, the realization can't occur without the illusion. So, you know, that contrast is necessary for everything.
mm,
We need to experience the density to experience the not density. You know, you need to
mm,
know what white is to know what black is. You know, you
mm,
need all of this to actually know that anything is anything. So when we demonize one thing, we're not opening ourselves up to seeing the potential in it. So now I'm at the point now where instead of like demonizing like any type of things, I'm really at the point of just seeing what the useful applications of those things are. And, you know, realizing that nothing is applicable in every scenario always, and nothing is never applicable for anything
mm.
unless it comes from a company owned from Insano.
Right.
That is the only thing I'm not budging on. If
For
you are
sure.
eating processed shit from a company that is owned by that company, it's not good. I will never say it's good. But sometimes I actually will turn that around. I'll never recommend that as something that's going to benefit us, but sometimes doing something that doesn't benefit you will teach you a lesson that benefits you.
It's the
So I
contrast.
wouldn't even say that it's that bad either. You know, I'm not going to say like, I don't like you, fuck you if you eat granola bars. You know, like that's not the case. It's like, you know, if you eat granola bars, you're gonna learn a powerful lesson potentially if you're observant and aware, you know, doing those things with awareness and kind of like analyzing yourself and the way you
Mm,
feel, you'll learn a lesson from doing that anyway. So even
yeah.
then, like I wouldn't even demonize that. And companies like Monsanto and the corporatocracy exists to show us what we don't want or what we want. Some people want
Yeah.
to play into the matrix and want to play into the corporatocracy, and some of us don't. And it's there to show us, you know, what side of us we want to tap into. It's like you have the potential to be anyone. You have the potential to be a pedophile. You have the potential to be jacked. You have the potential to be a drug addict. You have the potential to be whatever you want to be. And
Mm,
we all embody all of that, or we all can choose to embody whatever parts of that collective we want, but they're all us. They all show us, every other person, whether you like them or not, is showing you a part of you that you could potentially be. Like I said, the whole
yeah.
cosmos, the whole universe is
Yeah.
the reflection of you, of the whole you. So like if you don't like anyone or you don't like anything, it's just showing you the parts of you that you don't like or that you don't want to embody. And that's the beauty of the human experience. You know, you can choose who you want, like what you want to embody, what parts of you you want to show to the
Mm-hmm.
world or show to yourself. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're the movie, you're the actors, you're the script writer, you're the director, and you're the viewer. So it's like
Right
you get
on.
to play every role. So you get to decide what goes where in your human experience. You know, you get to decide who you hang out with, who you spend your time with, what food you eat, what experiences you give yourself, what lessons you learn, whether it's the easy way or the hard way. Like whatever it is, it's all pretty much in your control, whether you
Mm.
realize it's in your control or not.
Yeah, right
And
on.
whether
Yeah,
you're
that
aware, that's really all it comes down to. Do everything with awareness and you'll learn everything you need to know. Observe everything. I
mm,
mean, that's the scientific method, right? You know, fuck around and find out. But I mean, the legit scientific method, the way they describe it is form a hypothesis, come up with an idea, think about the potential of something happening when you do something, right? Then you test the hypothesis and observe, right? So you do the thing, you fuck around, and you know you see what's good with it, you observe what happens. You know, you eat the granola bars, you eat the Doritos, and you see what happens to your body. You observe, you feel like shit, you get heartburn, you sleep like shit, you wake up with a dry mouth, whatever. And then you analyze the observation and you draw a conclusion. So you say, okay, Doritos make me feel like shit, I'm not gonna eat them anymore. Or, you know, Doritos tasted really good and I felt like shit. Maybe I'm going to eat them like 10 more times to really realize that the downside is not worth the upside. You know, like
yeah.
sometimes you have to learn the same lesson over and over again too.
Yeah,
So
they come in
it's
different
all good.
cycles. Yeah.
It's all good.
Different shapes, different forms, different cycles. And, like if you're gluttonous in one thing, you're going to be, that's going to come back around in another way, like whatever that is. And that's a big thing with like, just to tie that into like business and like money. It's crazy how, if you're like hungry for food all the time, you'll be hungry for money. And when you have a certain amount, you'll be hungry for more. And it's about finding that balance of literally everything, because no matter what you decide to, journey on, whatever you decide your path is, you're going to have the same lessons of gluttony, of lust, of all of that. They're just going to be shown in different ways. And so that's why, like, I'm learning from it. Like, I could learn about fasting from someone who doesn't spend money. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, it's
Mm.
like you learn certain lessons just by observing people. And so,
With
you could
celibacy
choose
even.
whether, yeah, exactly. And it's huge, because when you start looking at it that way, you start to realize that everyone is your teacher. Like, whether they're teaching you what not to do or whether they're teaching you what to do, everyone's your teacher.
Exactly.
And so that was like a really big thing when I took like a 7 gram psilocybin mushroom, like last year sometime. But it was basically, what it was
I think that
showing
was
me
in the summer
was,
we were talking about it because that was right
yeah,
around when I started getting back into shrooms.
yeah, that was, yeah. We were gonna go actually on the live and talk about that, but then
We were. I remember
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, that was interesting. Those are interesting times. It was actually a little bit before that, but it was showing me, basically, it was showing me that, like, I left this vessel, right, and I was experiencing, whatever people want to call source, spirit, whatever, that experience is to you. I was just experiencing the oneness of all, and it began showing me what boredom was, and it began showing me why it created breath and why it created life, and it was to distract ourselves from being the only ones here. And so it started creating all of these different experiences so that we could learn from. And as much as we want to return to source, we'll do it when it's our time. And making that your only goal, to return back to source, you'll get back to that point where you're like, I'm everything, and that could get really lonely. And so it was just showing me that, like, breath was created to create, time, so that each breath is like equivalent to a certain duration, here. And so it was like, it was like a distraction from being alone. It started off with breath, and then with breath came other curiosities. And all of these curiosities were just here so that we could learn what it meant to contrast source, what is the opposite of oneness. And dualism arrived, and now we have all of these hot and cold, positive, negative, masculine, feminine, and there's all these different beautiful things that we can tap into and that we can learn from. And at the end of the day, we're always like, oh, we want to return back to source, we want to return back to spirit. But spirit and oneness wants to keep exploring itself through curiosity and through being adventurous and playful. And so that's something that like really, really opened my mind up to just be open to things, like really try to find how is source being reflected through this? How can I learn about the contrast of oneness through this dualistic experience? How can I look at the polarities of all of these things and experience all of them so that I know what what source was trying to, experience? How can I help assist source, myself, the most high? How can I, be part of that process? And how can, we learn from each other? And so that's been like huge for me, is just like not being demon. And that ties back into not demonizing things, because I realized that, even while I was plant-based, it was like I would see people that were just straight carnivore and I would love them. I would appreciate everything that they're saying, because I'm learning, I'm seeing what the contrast is. I'm seeing what kind of lifestyle that brings. And, I know source and, the most high appreciates me observing that, as opposed to demonizing that. Because when you're demonizing something, you're living in a state of giving certain kinds of frequencies to that certain action or whatever it is, experience, lesson, and you're kind of like being resistant to the teachings of whatever that experience is. So that was just like huge, something I wanted to like throw in there, because when you were talking about all of that, it just, that came to mind, of just like appreciating that, like, we will return back to source when it's our time. But, right now, just appreciate the things and the experiences and the lessons that are in our lives, because, once we're back at that source, we're going to be alone. We're going to, we are everything, but that can be really lonely. And I know a lot of people have experienced that too. And I'm sure you have, even through breath work, you get to that point where you're like out of body and you're like, oh, like, what is this? And then, all of a sudden a state of like, almost like fear, like uncertainty comes. And then you're like, all right, focus back on breath. I remember I created breath so that it would kind of distract me from being alone. It was just like it's a whole like trip. It's literally a whole trip. And that's why, like, I actually didn't do holotropic breathing until last year, or maybe the year before that. I think I saw one of your videos. It was like I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but it's 30 breaths in and out, hold at the top, and then I literally pass out every time I do it. And it's just, I did it this morning. I did it this morning. I was like, bro, today's going to be a good day. Today's going to be, you just leave the body and, you come back in, you're like, oh shit, there's more to life. Let me, like, that's going to come when it needs to come. And then, you come here in this experience and you're like, damn, like, I'm really out here. Like, this is crazy. It's just, it's so gnarly. It's so gnarly. So I'm actually super grateful that, you shared that. And that's the benefit of social media, right? You learn things, and, you just, you experiment with it and all that. That's why
Definitely.
and
Yeah, I really like what
what
Ketzel said in the comment just now. He said, "Demonizing anything becomes an excuse to not have to understand it." That is
facts.
that is a powerful statement right there. That's very
Yeah.
true. And honestly, like with the animal products, that's something that definitely was the case for me. Demonizing it was an excuse for me to not understand it. And the more that I
Mm,
came to understand it, like after I did that live with that Vegan World Order dude, I had a lot of, guys that advocated for raw meat starting to follow me and starting to like low key give me information over time. And then over time, I was like, these guys actually have some pretty good information. At
yeah.
least like on the animal side of things, like it's not so cut and dry. And a lot of people in the vegan world are unfamiliar with the idea that factory farming isn't the only way to interact with animals. And,
Yeah.
as soon as they think about animal products, rape, murder, torture,
Mm-hmm.
factory companies, corporations, that's, they associate animal products
Mm-hmm.
with just that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not that's not the full spectrum. So it is kind of like an ignorance to not understanding the full, the full spectrum of the animal side of things as far as foods go. So that's definitely a powerful concept. And back to what we were saying about the oneness, experiencing the duality. The duality is still the oneness. It's just one breaking itself up into two halves and
Mm-hmm.
experiencing itself by having fun, with its contrasting reflections. It's the nothingness can be the everythingness simultaneously. But if you just focus on the fact that it's nothing, you never get to, you're ignoring the fact that it's also everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, the nothing and the everything also have their benefits. It's not to say that even going into the oneness and doing the breath work and leaving the body is bad either, because it's really fun. Anything that's done in excess or in an imbalanced manner will bring us out of, out of bliss, out of fun.
Mm,
When you do the breath work, for a period of time every day, once a day or twice a day, you're not like only sitting and doing breath work every day for like the rest of your life. When you do it occasionally, which can be every day, but on occasion, you are um having fun with it. And then when you try to make it like your whole life and you demonize everything that's not breath work, then the breathwork becomes not fun anymore because it's too
mm,
much. You get bored of it.
mm,
You're like, I'm forcing myself to do this and I don't want to do it anymore. But like,
yeah.
after you work out, or you do something and you do breathwork because you want to, that breathwork is so fucking good because you want to do it, because you're not overdoing it. And then the same thing when it comes to anything else, when it comes to eating. If you're overeating, then, the eating becomes a problem. If you're
Mm,
eating in cycles and rhythms and patterns, then that's fine. You eat, you fast, you eat, you fast, you go in waves. That's what I always say, that the cycle, it's always in cycles. So everything is in
mm,
phases. Even the way that I eat, like, how I said, you were saying before, how you do try to eat as consistently as possible, but there's nothing that you do forever. And that's,
mm,
that's the nature of cycles, like in winter, nature is doing winter the whole time. And
mm,
then it decides to switch and do spring the whole time. And then it switches
mm,
to summer the whole time, and then fall the whole time. So it's like it is doing things consistently, but not consistently forever. It's consistently switching what it's doing consistently,
mm.
cyclically,
Yeah,
perpetually.
exactly. And there's a time and place for all of it. And yeah,
Exactly.
Bob, that definitely is like, yeah, an inner body experience and outer body. Like for me, it's the same thing. When I say outer body, I just mean like, the universe experiencing itself. Um, that's it. Just the universe
More
experiencing
like
itself,
directly.
and then
Yeah.
inner, the inner body is me experiencing the universe. So it's just like as above, so below, as within, so without. So it's just like there's definitely it's two sides of the same coin. It's just how your perspective of how you want to look at that.
Yeah, and this is a topic that I actually discussed with my students in Breathwork Bootcamp in the most previous wave. The difference between inner body and outer body experience. Saying that you don't resonate with outer body experiences, but you resonate with inner body experiences, is only accepting one side of the spectrum, and there are both.
Mm,
Me looking at this screen, looking at Rob right now, is an out of body experience. I'm experiencing something that's out of my body. I'm experiencing me going outside and looking at a tree. That's out of my physical body. That's an out of body
mm,
experience. Everything in the physical world is an out of body experience. The inner body experiences are the stuff when you go in. Now
mm,
we also discussed in that class the difference with when astral projection is internal and external, and you can kind of decipher this based on time. So if we look at the spectrum of things, um, you know, the concept of life being self-similar, fractal theory, where like the tip of your finger can be an entire universe, and then that Earth itself is a cell of a larger organism that is on Earth, which is part of like, everything is like self-similar on the macro and micro scale. So we're inside of a macro organism, which is inside of another macro organism, and vice versa. Inside of every single one of our cells is an entire universe. So
mm,
with that concept, as you go on the smaller scale, time is relative to size. So the smaller you go, right? Like the life cycle of one of your cells can only be a couple hours or can be a day or two. And that life cycle of that one cell, from its perspective, is an entire lifetime. It is eternity,
mm,
essentially. It is
mm,
like the billions of years that Earth has been around. Earth is one cell of an organism that is dying in one day of its perspective. So as you go bigger, time is essentially like slower, and then as you go smaller, time is moving faster. So when you astral project inside of you, right, you're going internal into your body somewhere, you'll notice that it feels really long, like you were somewhere for like a really long time, and then you come out and it's only been like 2 minutes. Now when you astral project outward, it could feel like you've been gone for 2 minutes and you've been gone for an hour.
mm,
So that's really how you know
mm.
whether you went in your body or out. The
Yeah,
time,
yeah. That's actually interesting. That's really interesting. I
right?
didn't think about it like that.
And this was just my perspective, just a theory that I came up
For
with
sure.
based on me, doing a lot of fucking breath work over
Yeah.
the years.
That's what it comes down to when you really connect with your breath. You realize breath is spirit, and then you start, just exploring what does spirit even mean, and you start learning through the breath, because it does bring you back to that state. Oh, that's just beyond. It's like
That passing
it's a
out
state of
state, or
observation.
I like to
Yeah.
say, like, are you passing out or are you passing in?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's how you
Yeah, no
tell. You
doubt.
know, sometimes you pass in, not out.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. And that's something that's like, I don't know, just such a gnarly experience, however you want to call it. Um, it's just experience. Yeah. It's like, again, it's something that you don't fully like. You can intellectually talk about what it means to like pass out, pass in, and like all these different things. But until someone like actually feels that, it's a whole different ball game. And that's why, like, you know, the whole psychedelics thing is an interesting topic too, because you know there are a lot of people that have used that tool to tap into spaces to cure anxiety and things like that. And you know, you can talk about those benefits and how it can help you, but until you actually experience that, it's it's just next level. Because all of all of my childhood, pretty much, I was pretty angry. Like I was pretty, I shouldn't say pretty angry, but I had a short temper. Like it was like, yeah, I would just get pissed off, easy, or well, whatever we want to call that, because we know what that means,
Not
right?
pissed on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like just angry, and I realized that it was a lack of connection with breath. And when I took the psychedelics, it brought me back to breath, and then that's what brought me back to the peace. It wasn't necessarily that the psychedelics went right to peace. It was things that brought me back to breath that really made me just observe my emotions, observe what it is that wasn't in alignment with what I was, what I deemed to be peace. So that's like that's a huge learning experience for me. I'm trying to like read the chat and talk at the same time.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, it looks like people are talking about the raw
I feel like they're,
meat.
yeah, like kind of like the meat thing. I mean, let's generalize, I guess. We talked about the human experience kind of being about fun. Let's talk about like why we don't remember past lives in the beginning. It's because
Mm,
the whole point is you're not taking anything with you from here on. It's the beauty of the experience. You get to start over. If you remembered things from every lifetime in the past, you would not have anything to accomplish or anything to learn. You would already know. So that's what the oneness is. If the oneness was always the oneness, there would be nothing outside of it to experience. So it has to break itself into fragmented versions of itself to experience the alternative reflections of
mm,
itself to realize the oneness. It's basically the breaking down and rebuilding, construction and destruction in rhythm is what makes the whole thing fun. You know, I mean,
mm,
it's the whole nature of the experience. So what they were talking about in the chat about our upbringing being a great factor in the way that we view the world. I mean, yeah, this is a great point. We are here from what we experienced throughout our human experience, from the time we took our first breath in this physical body. What is this physical body and this you know um this vehicle, whatever you want to call it, learned in that time? Because the mind is the body, they're the same thing. Your memory is your body. So since you can only remember what's in your body. And I mean, not to say that everything that's ever happened to any of your ancestors since the beginning of time isn't stored in your DNA in your body somewhere. We have to put in the work and actually spend time to remember all of these things. But in the meantime, while we're in that process, we're also learning things in the physical now. So we're
mm.
constantly evolving, and epigenetics, like our genetics are constantly changing, and we are basically like rewriting the code in our DNA at all times from what we experience. So it's not necessarily a bad or good thing that our upbringing determines the way that we view the world. It just is the way it is. And
Yeah.
whatever the way that you were brought up to view the world is the way that you chose to. So it's cool, And if someone else was brought up a different way, they chose to see the world differently from you. They chose to come into a timeline where they view the world in a different way than you do. And that's okay. If we're demonizing the way that someone else sees the world, we're demonizing a part of ourselves. And basically, we're just not allowing ourselves, like Ketzel said, we're making that as an excuse to not understand that part of the world, or that part of
Mm.
ourselves. You can view the
Yeah.
world as all sunshines and rainbows. Oh, there's nature and fruit and birds and cycles and weather, and it's beautiful. Or you can say there's pedophiles and they traffic children, and fucking the CIA did 9/11 and whatever. Like, whatever you want to say, and just be on that side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
They're both the extremes, and realistically, there are both of those sides on Earth, and we
Yeah.
can choose to view them however you want. But if you
Mm.
see the full spectrum of everything and you allow yourself to get away from your conditioned mindset to view things in a certain way with a specific emotional like framework, you can see everything for what it is, and that is balanced. There
Yeah.
is all of the bad and all of the good, all of the light and the dark, and whatever, dualistic terms you want to use, all the masculine and feminine, whatever. It's
Mm,
all in balance if you look at the big picture. And if you think that the world isn't balanced, you're only looking at a specific side of a spectrum.
yeah.
If you're viewing the world for everything that it is, you see that it's balanced. And if you don't see that it's balanced, you're not looking at the whole spectrum. And that's okay too, because that's part of the journey to
Yeah.
seeing the full spectrum.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually gonna add on to that too. It's just like balance is a never ending process of like exploration. You're teeter tottering, and balance is like it's not just stillness. It's the process of reaching stillness. It's like there's 0 point, like it just doesn't exist. One finite point, at least here, in this dimension or whatever we want to call this. This experience here runs on the continual cycles of balance, and we create that balance through the exploration of polarity. And so when we explore one side, there's some other energy. Whatever energy we give to one side, the equal amount of energy is being given to the other side of that polar spectrum. So it's just like it's kind of a gnarly thing to think about, because
Definitely.
do we it makes you think, like, do we actually change things because we're giving thought to it, or is it already changing because there's another side of my reflection or whatever that's giving the same amount of energy to the other side, and it's creating this dualistic experience here. So
But it's kind
it's
of
like,
both and neither. you
yeah,
know?
yeah, exactly. It's just like you go in circles just talking about that forever.
Yeah, and like what Fav's saying with like we're always balanced. I mean, it is like there is balance in imbalance. Like for example, like inhaling and exhaling, right? Breathing. When you take on air, you're now taking on some form of imbalance. If you were already imbalanced somewhere in the middle of inhale and
Hmm.
exhale, you know what I mean? You're still fully inhaling and then
Hmm.
fully exhaling. So you're still swinging the pendulum from one side to the
Yeah.
other. Or you could say that you're fully balanced when there's nothing in you. So that means you would fully fill up and then fully return. And that means literally every breath you're taking, you're choosing to get as full, as out of balance as you could possibly get, and then return to balance and experience the relief that comes
Yeah.
with that. So I mean, that is basically like a metaphor. I love using breath as a metaphor for literally everything in life because it
Yeah.
is. So I mean, no matter what it is, like even when you eat food, right? When there's nothing in you and you're totally empty, you're completely balanced. Your hormone, everything is
Mm.
the way that it's supposed to be, total balance, because your body has reached homeostasis because it hasn't had any external stimuli. As soon as you put a stimulus in, now you eat food, now you're totally out of balance. Now everything has to compensate, everything has to figure that out.
Mm.
And then you poop and you pee and you exhale, and now you're back to balance. And that's the beauty of the experience. You got to experience that food, the text, the temperature, the information. That tree was sitting outside for months listening to the wind and the cycles of nature and the ground and everything. And you basically just downloaded the software that is that song that you got to
Mm.
experience all of that. But in order to experience that, you had to throw off balance and get back to returning to it.
Mm.
Otherwise, you would have never got the experience of that fruit. So the same thing goes for anything in life. You need to go out of balance to return to balance to have fun in the process of doing exactly that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's definitely, like they're saying in the chat, it's hard to define balance, because balance is like what does balance mean to you? What exactly are you talking about when you say balance? It's like, is it, when you've reached homeostasis? Is it when you're doing things to reach homeostasis, or is it when you're coming out of it and coming back into it? Like, what exactly is
The
balance? And
way
I
that
think
I
that's,
think of it, the
yeah.
way like when I say the word balance, what I think is an even exchange. So if you think of
Yeah.
balance, right? Let's like a scale, right? There's two sides of the scale and they both have nothing on it, right?
Mm.
That's not balanced. I mean, that's balanced, right? There's nothing on either
Mm.
side. Both sides are even,
Mm.
right? Now, you can add stuff on both sides and it's still balanced. And then
Mm.
you can add one thing on one side first and then put something on the other side to then balance it. So
Mm.
the restoration of balance would be like balance as a verb, like restoring balance or balancing
Yeah.
something. And
Yeah.
then balance itself is any way that things don't tip to one side. So,
Mhm.
like physical balance, when you're running or when you're standing on a tightrope, balance is not falling to one side. So the same thing with, I guess, anything in life, I would refer to balance as just even exchanges. So I wouldn't say like you need to nitpick and say, okay, I just ate, so now I'm imbalanced. And now I just pooped, so now I'm back to balance. I would say that that is accurate, but I think that it's not necessarily like important to think of it in that detail every
Yeah.
single time. It's kind of like
Yeah.
if you look at the grand scheme of things, right? Everything is eventually going to balance itself out, and it is already in balance because that cycle of unbalancing and rebalancing is always happening perpetually, whether we influence it or
Mm,
not. Everything that we
mm,
do to throw something out of balance, something else is going to be done to restore it. So it's
mm,
not to say that we can't throw anything out of balance. You eat salt, you're throwing stuff out of balance. You definitely
mm.
are. But that doesn't mean that balance can't be restored. So
Yeah.
balance, I guess, in my opinion, like the way that I view a balanced life is kind of just being aware. This is really what I put everything down to. Living life with conscious awareness and awareness of breath, you will find where things are leaning to one side and where they're even. And
Mm,
whether that's your exchanges with the amount that you give to people and the amount you get back, whether that's the amount of work you put into the amount of money you make, whether it's what you do in a relationship compared to what you get back in the relationship. It's all, if you are striving to keep exchanges even, you can find balance in that. And the more aware that you are, like Ketzel just said, of all of the cycles of existence, you realize that they are already balancing themselves, whether you try to or not. So like you can be aware and try to like manipulate balance for yourself, but either way, like you're gonna find it eventually anyway.
yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
that is in death or during life. Some people
Yeah.
don't really find their balance until, they find that in death. And some people
Mm,
find it, during life. And that's just, based on your own personal will and your personal awareness, and that's totally, we have the capacity to do both. We have the capacity to ignore and we have the capacity to observe and be aware, analyze,
mm,
and, draw conclusions. So it's all good. It's all, I mean, it's
yeah.
not even, I wouldn't even say good because that's saying like it's not bad. It's all both. It's all
It
everything.
all
Like it
is.
is, everything is everything. It just is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a beautiful way to put it too, because then it gives you the option to just observe and not necessarily put a label on it, and you accept it for kind of like what it is. And so yeah, you mentioned because I got a lot of questions about salt specifically, and like the ocean salt and being in the ocean, because I know you've been in the ocean a good amount, and I wanted to ask you like personally, because like I told you I was experimenting with sodium levels and
Mhm.
potassium levels as well, and how that's affecting me. So like my question for you is, when was the last time you experimented with like whether it is sea salt, and what's that experience like to compared to like being in the ocean and absorbing it through your skin? Because I'm under the impression that
You
if
mean
you
like
live
eating
by
it?
the ocean, what was that?
Like when was the last time I tried eating it?
Yeah, like
Okay.
consuming it. Yeah, and
Okay.
because like for me, my experience, or my understanding is that if you live by the ocean, or if you're swimming in the ocean, you're absorbing it through either the breath or the skin. And so when you're living, out here in Chicago, you're not getting a lot of that salt in the air, and you're not getting it. Obviously, you're not swimming in the ocean. So for me, when I'm releasing the sodium, whether it is through sweat, obviously you can consume urine, and that'll kind of restore the sodium levels. But I've noticed that when I incorporate sea salt, I'm not as thirsty, and I know that kind of goes against everything that we like you've talked about, and like we have experimented with. Because I notice, I'll take like half a teaspoon of um, Celtic sea salt before my training sessions, and I don't have to drink the entire time, and I'm not thirsty, and um, yeah, I feel very hydrated. So I think there is a balance of like the amount of liquids that you do consume versus the amount of sodium and the potassium as well, because obviously this sodium potassium pumps for the neurons in your cells. It's required to
Yeah.
pump. So I'm just kind of curious on that, on where you are.
Okay. Yeah. So here's my perspective on salt. I mean,
Mm,
so first, I don't like to use sodium and salt interchangeably
yeah, yeah.
because I don't think that they can accurately be used interchangeably because there are salts that don't involve sodium whatsoever. So
Yeah.
there are, and this is like a theory as well. I mean, supposedly 12 cell salts. And I mean, there's more, but the ones that are marketed are usually 12, like 12, but there's
Yeah.
definitely more major salts that contribute to bodily function. So most of them I would say are sodium or like potassium based, and there are lots of other ones too. Magnesium salts. There's lots of different ones. So I mean, sodium is one specific. Potassium is another one, like you were saying. Um,
Mm.
there really should ideally be a ratio. So that's there is a ratio that will bring us balance of these different minerals and these different salts. So just like when it comes to cholesterol, just like when it comes to fats, I think there's, none of these things should be demonized and everything should be in balance. So, I mean, sodium chloride isn't one of the cell salts. It's not
Mm.
necessary for bodily function.
Mm.
It is a way, the body does have the ability to break it down and, separate, dissociate it and then rebuild it into other things. Of course, everything is an alchemical tool, but I don't see sodium chloride as something necessary. Personally, in my journey, there's never been a time where I ever felt I needed it, and every time that I tried to give it a chance, I always got thirsty. So that's just my
Mm.
personal experience with it.
Yeah.
And I have spent a lot of time in the ocean, so maybe that's why. I would say an excess will definitely make you thirsty. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
an excess will definitely make you thirsty if you aren't going in the ocean or you're not living anywhere near the ocean, which I'm pretty sure you haven't. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
So that could be a potential, but salt is definitely something that we do need, salts in
Mm.
general. And I just made a post about this the other day, but I guess we could talk about it. A salt is basically the product of a reaction between a cation and an anion, between an
Mm.
acid and a base. So two ions, one negative, one positive, join together to make something of neutral charge, right? That's what a salt is, the result. So like
Mm.
sodium chloride is, balanced. It's a neutral charge, or
Mm.
other salts are just like cations and anions coming together to balance into a neutral charge. So basically, what happens with any of these salts is, they are catalysts for different bodily functions, of course. And most of the time, where we say we need these minerals, it's more optimal for us to get them in the salt form. But either way, the body makes all of them. Like as far as minerals and like salts go, this is one of the things that I am definitely a firm advocate for, the fact that the body can definitely make with breath. Um,
For sure.
compared to like more denser arrangements like sugars and other things. I mean, external consumption definitely helps with the creation of fats. But
Mm.
I mean, like things like that. Eating saturated fat compared to monounsaturated compared to polyunsaturated, you want a ratio. So same thing with like cholesterol. Like LDL cholesterol isn't necessarily bad for you, but the ratio needs to be balanced. You need to have significantly more HDL than you do LDL. If you have higher LDL than you do HDL, now you have a problem. But the problem isn't the LDL. The problem is the lack of HDL to balance
Mm.
that out. So
Mm.
your cholesterol can be significantly higher than someone else's if both HDL and LDL are higher. But if you have an imbalance of that ratio, then someone who's significantly lower with a balanced ratio is better off in that sense. So same with salt, I would say, where like, you want a balanced ratio of all different salts. If you're just loading up sodium chloride and sodium chloride is the only salt you're consuming externally, then in that sense, you are imbalancing everything. I forget the specific
Mm.
ratio, but you're supposed to have significantly more potassium than you do sodium in your body. It's
Yeah.
like several hundred, it might even be like 1,000 times more. I think it's several hundred, like 300 times more
Mm.
times potassium than you do sodium in your body. And sodium chloride is just like straight up like concentrated sodium
Yeah.
chloride. So it's not, there's no balance of the salts. Like when you drink celery juice, there is balance of different salts. There's different minerals and different salts in there, for example. In the
Yeah.
ocean water, there's different ones. In your pee, there's all of them. So um,
Yeah.
in milk, there's most of them as well,
Yeah.
if not all of them, depending on the animal and depending on what they
For
eat and
sure.
shit.
Yeah, I know
Um,
raw goat milk for sure has all of them.
goat milk is the shit.
Yeah, goat milk's probably the most superior
Yeah,
superior
and
milk.
honestly, in my opinion, my body I enjoy the taste of it the most too. It's the lightest,
Yeah.
it's the best consistency in my opinion, and I actually like the way it tastes better than the other ones. The cow is
Yeah.
kind of heavy for me personally. The A2 cow milk is a little heavy for me. The cream is a
Yeah.
little thicker, I think, and then I don't know. The sheep is like a. Some people really love sheep, but it's
I
like
haven't had sheep.
super. I'm not a huge fan. It's like too creamy for me. It's like it's
Mhm.
good on occasion, but like to drink daily, I think it's a little too heavy for me, like too creamy. Um, like some like Aubrey and Eli, like they love it, but my dad likes it better. I like the goat milk better.
Yeah,
And
for
that's just
sure.
preference, I guess. But I mean,
Yeah.
I would say second to goat, I actually like water buffalo milk, the second best.
What about you? You've been experimenting. We don't have any that we have.
This Amish place in PA, bro, they got a bunch of
They
different
got
stuff.
it. They got the plug.
I've been drinking the whey from the water buffaloes. Like when you have the
Yeah.
milk, right? Like just like juice settles over time. If you leave the milk like in the fridge or something, it'll separate. Even if it's on the counter, it'll separate the. Except
Hmm.
it's the opposite usually with juice. The sediment will go to the bottom with juice. The cream will float to the top of the milk, and then basically like if you scoop the cream off the top and maybe strain the liquid remaining, the liquid part, like the strained liquid, is the whey. That's what they call whey. And then you have the heavy cream, or the fermented version of that would be like the sour cream. So
Hmm.
I've been drinking a lot of whey, like when I work out, and it's super light. Like it's totally different than like drinking the whole milk. So like when I'm actually working out, I'll drink the whey, and then like post workout or just throughout the day, I'll drink the milk. But the
Hmm.
water buffalo whey is fire.
All right, bet I'm gonna have to try that when I come through. But yeah, I never
Definitely.
never had that. We don't have that much at the local farm here. They have raw goat milk, raw just regular cow milk, and then they have cheeses as well. So yeah, I mean, just tying it because someone asked, should you consume salt? Just tying back into that. I just personally, I think you should just experiment with it. I think if you live by the ocean, swim by the ocean, there's no need because I didn't finish my thought before, but how I because I've gone to Miami a decent amount, and I've gone to the beaches there. Like when I'm down there, I'm by the beach like all the time. And so the way I feel when I'm by the beach, swimming in the ocean and just like chilling right next to the ocean is how I feel when I consume the Celtic sea salt here. So, you know, I think there is like a huge benefit to living by the ocean. And, I think it's going to come down to experimenting with yourself because, for me personally, it's helped me when I consume the Celtic sea salt in terms of like physical activity, like, and in terms of my thirst. I don't drink that much water just in general. I
Yeah.
never really did, like the past 18 months minus this last month. I've been experimenting with distilled water this last month. But
Mm.
prior to that, for like 18 months, it was just like the juices from fruits and the liquids from fruits. And I noticed that when I was consuming um, celery celery juice consistently, I noticed my workouts are more consistent. I'm like, all right, well, what's in celery that I'm not normally consuming? And it's the organic salt in there. And so,
Yeah, celery is
um,
also a really good aromatase inhibitor too. So it
no, nice.
prevents testosterone from converting into estrogen.
Nice. All right. Yeah. I mean, I'm about to juice some celery probably right after this. But yeah, I've been experimenting with that too. And another thing is coconuts. I know like, what's your experience? Because this is just for me personally. Sorry, guys. This is a question for me personally. When comparing drinking like from a carton versus the actual coconut, like, do you think it's even worth drinking it from the carton? Like what do you think?
No,
No, right?
no,
Like,
no.
and
I don't
and
even
and that's
drink
the
coconut
thing.
water in Jersey. I haven't had a coconut since I left Nicaragua.
That's the thing too. I stopped with the carton, and I'm feeling kind of better. I
Better.
stopped with
Yeah.
the carton ones, and
No
even
more
though
fake
ones that are
water for
wrapped in
me.
plastic, the
Yeah,
baby
nah, fuck
coconuts, the
those
young
too.
ones.
I don't drink those either. I'm literally
Yeah,
like, if I'm not in the tropics, like it's not local. You know what I mean? If I'm in New
yeah,
Jersey, I got no business drinking coconuts. If I'm in
yeah,
Florida, if I'm in Hawaii, if I'm in Nicaragua, if I'm in Costa Rica, if I'm in Mexico, great. Coconuts all motherfucking day. But until I get back somewhere where they're growing, I'm not going to drink one. I'm all
yeah,
for the goat milk and shit while I'm here
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's what we have
exactly.
here.
Yeah, and that's kind of something I knew because when I went in India, we would get coconuts over there, and they were fire like so good and really
Hmm.
hydrating. And then I was like, all right, when I go back to the states, I'm gonna drink a lot of coconut water, and it was just like it just wasn't the same. And I think you mentioned like even harmless harvest, like that, I don't know that
They're
something
fucked
sketch
up.
with that.
They're
That's
harmful
some
harvest.
yeah, I don't know. It's like I've never seen coconuts that like the coconut water that color ever and not that sweet. And it honestly kind of tastes like cleaning products, like
If any Coke, it
aftertaste,
does kind of taste like cleaning products. That has.
right?
If you were to open a real coconut, like from the tropics, like, and you
Mm,
see the inside pink like that, you couldn't even sip it. Like, it would be so disgusting and like
mm,
gone bad already. Like,
yeah.
so that alone like was sketchy for me too. And then when it comes to like the sugariness, like if you go to the tropics, spend a month fasting on coconut water, right? And then you go back to New Jersey and you drink a Harmless Harvest for the first time, you're like, ew, this is disgusting. Like, it's not even good. It used to take me like a solid week or two to get used to Harmless again and get like re-addicted.
Hmm.
Like, it would
Yeah.
be like, honestly, like I'd be like almost forcing myself to do it because I didn't know what else to drink. And yeah, now I'm definitely off that. The milk definitely helped me have something to replace it with. Um, but I want to go back real quick to the question of should you eat salt,
Mm,
right? If you're asking someone else the question, should I do this? Should I eat this? Should I do that? You're already missing the point of this whole entire podcast episode. The whole point is like, and it's not to say that's a bad thing either. This is like, hopefully whoever asked that question, you're listening right now and you're learning from this. This is something that I used to do with people that I was learning from. And really, like, your answer was accurate. But yeah, just trial and error. Like, find out for yourself. I personally have learned on my own that sodium chloride does not benefit me at all. I have never eaten it in any amount, in any form, and felt good. Never. So for me, it doesn't work. For someone else, it may work. I don't know. I don't have your body. We didn't grow up the same way. We didn't eat the same shit our whole lives. We don't breathe the same. We don't live in the same environment. Like, sure, so it may suit you. I might be, subconsciously getting salt from the ocean, which I most likely am from swimming in the ocean and surfing and being near the ocean
mm,
and doing things like that. Compared to someone who lives like in Kentucky or something. I mean, it can be totally different. So depending on where you are, where you grew up, what you eat, everything, like it can all play a role. So I mean, I never recommend one thing for everyone. Like, try your own shit, really. Like, try
mm,
everything out for yourself. Like, even things that I say to not do, do them anyway and find out why I said not to do them. Because if I tell
mm,
you why, that's different than you experiencing why. And that's, basically our main concept here. Um, with the intellectually understanding versus experientially understanding something.
mm,
You know, I can tell you what Taylor said. Back in the day, like I was able to regurgitate everything Taylor Budd was teaching me at the time,
mm,
and it took me years now to actually form my own conclusions based on the information that I was getting from him. I had to take 5 years to do it and test everything and do the things that he was telling me not to do to realize, okay, he was right about this one. This one, I feel the same thing. And other things where I'm like, okay, I actually don't feel that. I actually
yeah.
feel different. And now, there's other people who agree with me and there's other people that don't. And just goes to show you, like, people will always disagree with you and people will always agree with you. Like I came out and say I drink pee, and now there's thousands of people out here drinking pee. So like people will agree with just about anything and people will disagree with just about anything. You say
Mm,
fruits are good for you and people will disagree with you. So like, it depends. But
yeah,
I
yeah,
would just say
exactly.
find what works for you because no one will be able to tell you what will work for you
Hmm.
except your body. So if you
Yeah.
eat salt and you're thirsty, do it. And honestly, try things multiple times. Like I tried salt initially and didn't really like it and got off it. I was never much of a salt kind of guy. I never really liked eating salt. And like, if I used to eat like pasta as a kid, like I would eat like plain pasta. I was like a very bland type kid food. I was very picky, barely ate
Yeah.
anything. And when my parents would like put salt in the pot to make the pasta, I would like taste the difference and be like, I'm not eating this. I don't like it.
Mm,
Like you can't put salt in. I don't like it. And it was weird. Like so throughout my life, like I've never really been much of a salt guy.
mm,
So that's my own personal preference. And now it's like, I've given it tries. I've given it a try multiple times. I have, gone back and been like, okay, let me see, like, because obviously there's a lot of information that people put out that say that salt is essential and that we need to eat it. So I'm like, let me give it a try. And every time I try it, I'm like, this is terrible. Like, I
mm,
feel terrible. I'm thirsty. I'm never thirsty. I want water. I never want fucking water. Like,
mm,
fuck this. And even with like the sea asparagus powder, I noticed that something very interesting. So the difference between like organic and inorganic salts, right? The organic salts being like carbon based from a living organism, like in liquid form. So like when you consume, or at least when I consume sea asparagus fresh, right? They grow it on Oahu. When I was out in Hawaii, I was eating like just straight up like fresh sea asparagus, like a couple pieces to give you that like kind of salty taste, but
mm,
it never made me thirsty once. And it's like
mm,
wet. right? And then they have like the Salicornia powder, like the green salt, like that, they make like that. It's
Yeah.
dehydrated Salicornia. It's blended and dried like powder from sea asparagus powder, sea asparagus, and that shit made me salty every time, made me thirsty every time. So
Mm,
I think it does also have to do with like where it's coming from, because salt isn't just salt.
mm,
Sodium chloride isn't even just sodium chloride. I
right.
mean, it's, if it's coming from like the sea asparagus grows with its roots in the ocean water and grows out of the ocean water. So it kind of like it's feeding on salt water instead of regular water through its whole lifespan. So it
Mm,
does obviously have that salty taste. It honestly almost tastes like you're eating ocean water, but it's like a little better. And
for sure. Yeah, I gotta try
yeah,
it. I've never tried it.
and that felt hydrating. I've only seen it fresh in Hawaii. I've heard from somebody in my DMs a while ago that they have it in Australia. Um,
Okay,
I'm not sure where else they have it, but it has to be like an island type thing or tropical something.
for
I'm
sure.
guessing. But yeah, I mean, so that's an experience that I noticed with salt, like the inorganic stuff. So like, I'd rather get my salts from something living, and even if
Oh yeah.
that is like, I mean, I'll say one thing: I have drank lots of ocean water by accident, surfing, and every time it happens, I low key like feel great. Like, like this one
Yeah.
day, like when I was in Hawaii, I think I said this maybe on another podcast episode or alive, but I was in Hawaii and I ate like actually this was during Breathwork Boot Camp. I talked about this. We um we ate too much durian in the morning. We went to the market. There was just like durian at the market, and I usually don't eat early in the morning, especially not like something like durian. And I ate just like too much durian. And I went surfing right after we ate. So I'm like laying on the surfboard like on my chest, and I'm like burping up durian. And I'm like, oh, this is fucking miserable. Like, why did I do that? And then on one wave, like I fell and I just like accidentally just like literally took a full inhale, like straight gulped like mad ocean water. And I was just
Mm.
like, oh, that's going to make it so much worse. Fuck me. And then, like, a couple minutes later, I'm like, wow, that ocean water, like, fixed the problem. Like, I'm not
Mm.
burping up durian at all anymore. So
Mm.
I thought that was really interesting. And I've done a lot of thinking about ocean water. And, I mean, if you think about it, it's probably, like, mostly piss. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
like of every organism's pee
Yeah.
eventually ends up in the ocean, and like all of the fish, are inhaling and exhaling the water, so they are in a sense attaching carbon to it, like the same way that we inhale oxygen, O2, and then we breathe out CO2. We're attaching carbon
Yeah.
to the oxygen and then like letting it go.
Yeah.
So
Sacred
I feel like the
fluids,
fish are kind of
all in
doing
the
the same
ocean.
thing. They're just attaching
Yeah.
carbon to the water and like making the ocean
Yeah.
water alive by breathing
Mm.
it. So that those salts in the ocean water can actually be totally different from like table salt, obviously, or the salt like
Mm.
that's in it otherwise. So
For sure.
it can be like organic salt in liquid form. So in that sense, I would actually probably recommend drinking ocean water as opposed to eating
Over.
dried sea
Yeah.
salt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like the same thing with the Salicornia with the sea asparagus. Like the dried
Yeah.
version tends to make me thirsty. The
Hmm.
way that it occurs in nature actually doesn't make
Yeah.
me thirsty.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's just an interesting like kind of perspective from my experience, like things that I randomly noticed.
Yeah.
But I mean, I haven't really eaten salt maybe like 3 or 4 times in the
Mm.
last like couple years.
Okay. Nice.
And
Nice.
I did
Yeah.
I did a week and a half. I did like 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks on like the Dr. Sebi foods. So for like a
For
week
sure.
and a half or 2 weeks, I was like eating salt with that, and I felt
Um,
horrible. Like, and
yeah.
I
I did
posted
Dr.
pictures
Sabi
about the
for a
difference.
while.
Like when I tested the Dr. Sebi diet, it made me flabby as fuck and like terrible. Like it was just terrible. I was so low energy, like so
Uh,
addicted to food, like horrible. And it was like out of all the diets that I've tried, out of all the things I've tried, that was honestly, other than standard American diet, the worst. And actually, I looked way better. Like I was way more ripped up, way more vascular, actually had more energy when I was eating standard American diet compared to um, the Dr. Sebi diet. And that could have just been
yeah.
other factors, but I mean, and I only did it
Yeah.
for a short period of time. And I also went from like fruitarian fasting back to the Dr. Sebi diet. So that could have also been a factor as well.
Fab, you're messed up.
Yeah, for
No, but
real.
yeah, I hear you for sure. Yeah, the Sebi, the alkaline electric, quote unquote alkaline electric diet, didn't really work for me either. I think honestly, I just think it was the starch, and that's I guess what the
I
next thing we
agree.
could come down to. I can't do starch. Like there's just no way. There's just no
Bro,
way. Like
starch
my,
is
for,
is the one thing, like other than salt, like starch and salt are probably the two things, and cooked foods are the thing, like the trinity of things that I just can't do. Like that just haven't worked for my body like ever.
yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing too. That's another. It ties back into what we were saying: social media versus reality. Like you see all these people posting about like alkaline diets, and it's a lot of this starchy food. And I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying it didn't work for me personally. And
It can be
you know,
better than what you were doing in the past. This is the
yeah,
thing, like, that people don't understand. Like, you can eat something that's not long-term healthy for you and feel better. You know, you
hmm
could be on standard American diet and change one thing, stop eating one thing. Like, people go carnivore, right? And they eat just cooked steak and eggs for a month and they feel better. Great. You stopped eating like drugs. You stopped eating like freaking Rice Krispie treats and mac and cheese and pizza and like,
yeah,
potatoes and like, mashed potatoes and rice and beans with your
hmm
steak. And like, you know, as soon as people cut out starch, no matter what, they feel better. But some people, even when they just cut out like Monsanto drugs, they feel better. So it's like
hmm
feeling better doesn't mean you feel good. Like,
yeah,
not feeling bad isn't feeling good. Um,
facts.
there's a difference. And a lot of people feel better and think that they're there wherever there is.
hmm
Like there's no more to go. Like there's no way that I could feel better than this because I feel a little better than I felt last year. And
hmm
like from what I've noticed is like I felt really great doing lots of different things. I felt
Yeah,
phenomenal eating nothing but fruit. I
yeah,
have felt phenomenal eating nothing for 4 months straight. I felt
yeah,
phenomenal drinking nothing but my piss. I have felt phenomenal drinking raw milk and raw eggs and like, and raw cheese and like blueberries. So, I've done a lot of different things. One thing that I haven't done is carnivore or raw carnivore. So I can't really speak from experience
yeah.
on that one, but people do speak on that saying that they've had phenomenal experiences. And really like a major thing is that when you switch up anything, your body will feel different. And as your body adjusts, you'll think you'll feel better doing a lot of different things. And I feel like people make the mistake of thinking every new thing that they try is the thing. Like that's
Mm,
it. Like
hmm
okay, I was fruitarian and that was like the only thing that was good. Like everything but fruit is bad. And then you eat something
Yeah.
else and you're like only raw meat is good. Fruit is bad now. And it's like everything that ever made you feel good will probably still make you feel good. And the things that
Mm,
made you not feel good, like think of the things that consistently make you not feel good. For me, no matter what diet I was doing, starch was a common denominator of all of the things that made me not feel good.
mm,
Whether it's nuts, whether it's vegetables, whether it's um, you know, anything else. The starch, breads and pastas and whatever, the starch always made me not feel good and always like just fucked up like everything for me,
hmm
digestion wise. And honestly, everything that was raw and from nature made me feel good. Not even really that specific. So many things have made me feel good. Fruit has made me
Yeah.
feel good. Eggs have made me feel good. Um, you know, I did try raw liver and bone marrow once, which we talked about, and it didn't
Mm.
make me feel bad. I guess I didn't eat enough of it or like consistently enough to really notice any difference, but I ate it once and it didn't make me feel bad. I eat starch once and it makes me feel bad. So I'll say that.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm same thing with me. I've tried beef liver and kidneys, I think, and I only did it once though, so it's like it
I
didn't
heard
make me feel
kidneys
bad.
taste like piss. Do they?
Uh, yeah, honestly,
They kind of do.
honestly,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's super chewy too. It's like I took like a bite. I think I remember texting you. I was like, bro, I don't think I'm ever doing this ever again. But it was just
Yeah,
like
the
it's just like
texture is mad weird.
yeah, it's just like, I'll try everything at least once, like we said. Like I need
Exactly.
to know. I just need to know. Like that's just how I am. But
I
yeah,
will
it
say
was
I
just
didn't not like the bone marrow. I did not like the bone marrow.
yeah, I've been doing bone marrow. And
I
like
did the bone marrow with the sour cream and it was fire.
yeah, a stupid amount of fat in the bone marrow, and maybe that's why like I kind of like it
It's
cuz
enjoyable. I'm all
yeah.
for the fats, bro. I'm all for the
Yeah.
fats.
Yeah, honestly, I've kind of come to accept that too. It's like my fat intake has definitely increased the past couple of months, and I'm feeling pretty good. Like, and you know, like I'm not putting on fat. Like that's the biggest thing for me too. It was just like
Yeah,
because
fats
like
don't
right
make you
now,
fat.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like right now, my main focus is just like being, it's like building my body, like not in the sense that like a bodybuilder type thing, but like becoming the most athletic version of myself possible. That's been my goal like the past month or two, and like that's all I've been
Same.
focusing on. So not I shouldn't say all, but like that's definitely like an intention I'm setting because I just want to see, I think there
Where
was
your
a
body
quote that
can
said,
take you.
you know, there was like a quote that said, something like it's a shame for man to not know the limits of his physical body or something like that, something along those lines. And it really kind of hit me because I was doing a lot of fasting, I was doing a lot of um, just eliminating, and it definitely does have its place. And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying do it either, but it definitely served its purpose for me. It made space for me to build myself. And so, experiencing that lightness and then that density and going back and forth between that, it's been very interesting. And I just feel like right now I'm on that path of like building my body back up to, peak athletic performance. And that's kind of, yeah, that's been my focus, and it's been super fun because I'm kind of tapping into what I was, back in high school, because I think when I was like 15,
Feel
16,
that, bro.
yeah, yeah, I think that was honestly like my peak, my previous peak, for like in terms of like my size, my body to my weight to strength ratio, things like that. Like I was I was a monster, honestly, in my sophomore year. Like I
You
was,
were. I seen the pictures.
yeah, I was like, I weighed like, I only weigh a few more pounds now than I did back then. Like my physique is pretty much the same as when I was 16, which is crazy to think about because when I was like really eating a lot, like I was on that Whole Foods plant based, I was like backing up my gut, but I was eating a ton, and I was weighing like almost 180. I was almost 180 pounds, and like 30 of those pounds were definitely just food sitting in my colon. And then I went on the whole journey of fasting and eliminating, doing like liver cleanses, kidney cleanses, doing like all kinds of things just to clean myself out. And I dropped down to like, I don't know, 150 maybe, and I was like comparing myself and like doing all these things, and I was like, damn, I feel like so small, and like all these things like getting in my head. But I'm like, nah, like I literally feel the best I've ever felt. Aside from when I was like 16, and I'm like, okay, so obviously size isn't important like at all. And then that kind of furthered my journey into fasting, and I dropped weight. Like, not that weight matters, but it's definitely a good tool to use, just like with anything. I got
Yeah.
down like 128 or something like that when I was like fully fasted. That's when I had my infection, and I was just trying to eliminate everything. So I dropped down to like 128. Borax,
Mhm.
yeah, I still do take borax. I don't. I'm not consistent with it, so I don't feel really that comfortable speaking on it. But I will say that I do take it, and I do know that there are benefits to taking it. You can do your own research with that, especially when it
What is
comes to
borax?
boosting testosterone. What was that?
What is borax? I never heard of it. Somebody asked me about it last week, and I was like, honestly, I have no idea what that is.
Well, they use it for like here. One second, let me grab the let me see what's I forget what the mineral that's in it. But it's basically boron. I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So um yeah. Yeah. So it's boron, sodium
Okay.
borate.
Sodium tetraborate.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
So
search it up.
basically, you only really get boron in like certain soils. I'm not exactly sure, so I'm not gonna pretend like I know everything there is to know about it. But a lot of people are deficient in boron, and so that it claims to help with boosting testosterone. So if you're, I think a female asked, I don't necessarily know if you should, but I know it helps for men and testosterone.
Yeah,
So that's something I've been experimenting with as well.
nice. Yeah, I would say from what you were saying before, like I'm definitely in a rebuilding stage now too. And I mean, we've both done a shitload of fasting. So I felt like, I guess we both kind of in similar times, like felt like it was time to start rebuilding. And it's a lot of fun. Like I am definitely tapping into an athletic side of myself that I guess laid to rest in a way a long time ago. And it's been really fun. But I would say in comparison, like there are things that were differently good fasting and being super light. Like when
Oh
I
yeah,
was fasting, like the lowest weight I ever went was 113. That was the lowest at 5'11. And that's like pretty fucking skinny. Like I was definitely pretty skinny.
yeah,
A super vascular, super like ripped up, but like definitely like not big. And
yeah.
at that time, most of my workouts was just surfing and running. And I was running a lot longer distances and like feeling like, I'd run 8 miles, I feel like I like did nothing. Like straight up,
Mm-hmm.
like, my body was so like my endurance and my ability to not need was definitely more profound on smaller diet, fasting and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
like when my body was physically smaller. So
Mm-hmm.
now I've noticed, I've come to a conclusion or a theory at least that we as we build more muscle, it like requires more to sustain. So
Mm-hmm.
like if you want to run like long distance, like if you want to train for a marathon, if you have a larger muscle mass, you're going to have to consume a lot more to be able to do that than someone who's really skinny. And you'll notice a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these guys that win marathons are like really fucking skinny and lean.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a benefit to being super skinny and lean, and there's a benefit to being super big. So like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm not even saying that necessarily the goal is to find balance in that, to be somewhat big and, somewhat skinny. If you are like a long distance runner or somebody who like wants to do something like that, being skinny actually is a good thing because you
Mm-hmm.
actually won't need to consume as much and you won't need to be as heavy to do those things. And you'll actually be lighter and it just makes
Mm-hmm.
doing those things easier as well. And then if you are really trying to lift heavy weight and do like Olympic lifting or something, being physically bigger will help, mass, forces mass times acceleration. So having more mass can help you produce more force. So pretty much like, each has its time and place. There's nothing wrong with being skinny and there's nothing wrong with being huge. And there's nothing wrong with being in the middle.
Yeah,
It's kind of
yeah,
like each
exactly.
each each one just has its, I guess, time and place. And your body can totally transform in a matter of like a month or two, at least for me. Like, if I was to do like a 30 to 60-day fast, I could easily drop 20 pounds. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I can go into, eating, and most of it's probably poop, honestly, and just like a little bit of surface snot. But like,
Mm-hmm.
then once I started eating, when I was fruitarian, I was around 125, 130, like consistently. That was like my weight. And then fasting, I would get down into like the 115 range. 113 was the lowest I ever was, but usually like 115 to 120 was like my average rate, like range for the day. Um, and yeah, now like my average range for the day is like 138 to like 143.
Mm-hmm.
So like significantly like more weight, like probably like 20 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I've had clients that drop 20 pounds in 9 days of breathwork boot camp. I've had clients that lose 40 pounds in breathwork boot camp in 9 days
Mm-hmm.
just from taking shits. So I mean, it really depends on like where you start out with and how much extra weight you're holding on to. For me, that threshold is usually around 20 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was to fast and get to my natural body weight, it'd probably be like, I mean, now I have put on a little bit of muscle, so it would be probably like I'd probably be at around like 118, 119 to like 124-ish. That would be my
Mm-hmm.
guess. If I was to fast now, that's where I would cap out and hit that like no more losing weight at around that weight.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's interesting to see like over time, like how your body does like transform whenever you do things differently. Like every diet I ever ate, my body was totally different.
Same.
So
Same.
and they were all cool. Like they were all every time I thought this is the peak. And every time
Yeah,
I was
right.
like, some of them I'm like, this isn't necessarily better than it was then. But it's like it's differently better. Like some things are better now than were then, and some things were better then than they were now. It's just different. And that's really, to say things are better or worse, like, are they really? Or did your
Mm-hmm.
body just give you the exact best reaction to what you were doing?
Yeah.
You know,
And a lot of
if
it's
you're
placebo
fat, your
too,
body's
honestly.
your body's conditioned to eat. There's
Yeah.
no, if you want to eat as much as possible, get fat or get huge, like
Mm-hmm.
get absolutely massive muscular wise, and then you can eat as much as
Yeah.
you want. Some of these dudes are jacked and they just burn up everything they eat.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I guess, it comes down to preference too, like what you're looking to
Definitely,
do at
that's the
that
beauty of
given
the human
moment.
experience.
Yeah,
You get to
exactly.
choose.
So I'm always fluctuating where I'm like, I'm just trying to be like really lean. Just I don't care. I'm just because I especially in the summertime, I'm outside a lot. I'm longboarding or I'm running, and I drop weight a good amount. Where as opposed to in the winter, I'm mostly, I'll still do. I have a trampoline down in the basement, like a little mini one. So
Mm,
that's what I've been doing during the winter, and it's been nice. It's been getting my bunnies up. I just love
there you
being able
go.
to like be light and just jump. That's like
Yeah,
I just love doing that. So yeah, it's just like different times, different experiences will give you different physical outputs. And so it's fun for me to like have been able to experiment with like all types of things, throughout like when I was younger, from like 14 to like 20, it was just like hardcore, like quote unquote bodybuilding. Like it was just like, I was just going hard into that. And then, I went into the yoga and I did like a few years of that consistently, and that made me super flexible, but I also got like a lot weaker. Not that that's a problem, but it just like I noticed it, and I just felt like going back, tapping back into strength and like athletic performance, and then it's like a whole flow. It's just like we were talking about, like balance. Like what does that mean to you, and like how are you managing flowing through the process of balance? So it's been cool. It's been a cool experience. I'm super excited to like see what my physical limits are, if I even have any,
Feel that.
and like just keep like we just keep pushing ourselves, and that's basically been my goal. And I'm definitely going to share more of that experience online. Like now I've been like super busy just to get a little more personal. Like I've been doing like a lot of behind the scenes like collaborations, like things like that, and I also run the page Humanity Enlightened on Instagram too. So that's been like a whole journey too. So it's just finding the balance to like help people out that are reaching out, because right now like my availability is like it's not there. Like I'm on calls like almost every
I know
single
how
day,
that
and
feels.
yeah. So it's like it's just like there's a time and place. So like yeah, it's just finding out what your priorities are now, and like I feel like I eliminated it, and I cleansed and detoxed to the point where like my focus now is like building community, building my body, building loving relationships,
Mm.
just building. Like I feel like that's the energy I'm on right now. I've cleansed people out of my life that don't need to be in my life. I've been doing that like the
You've
past
done the
4 years.
destruction. Now it's time for the construction.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to make room for that stuff to happen. So that's kind of like I'm seeing it, and that's another big thing too with like fasting. When you start fasting, you start telling yourself, that you are everything, and that you need nothing. And then so, it can get kind of gnarly with the people that you detox from your life, because those experiences aren't always pretty. Just like the detox experience, like having like the diarrhea, like whatever it is, like it's not pretty. And so sometimes that'll reflect in the physical world. And so, you just got to find, accept that, find peace with that, and kind of just go with the flow with that. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say on that. I don't know if we
Nice.
want to like go into questions, or if you have something else to
Yeah, I was gonna
say.
say this. We kind of like kept going for a while, but yeah, we could start getting into questions.
For sure.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I think we should prioritize the people that are here on the live, and then we can go into questions. We covered a lot of the questions. Most of it was like what we're physically
Yeah.
doing. The salt was another big one.
Yeah, I
Fasting.
feel
There's
like there
some
hasn't
other
been
ones.
too many other questions in the chat. I've kind of been looking throughout. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like we get into the ones from your story.
Yeah. Here, let me look. Let me look. See what I got. Um, so we'll do ones that are like interesting, because we've already gone into like health and like all that, and like we enjoy, as much as we enjoy talking about the physical body and health and all that, like we have other
There's a lot
um
more to life than just that.
right, exactly. Hold on, let me pull this up. All right. Um I'm just trying to find ones that aren't necessarily about like health. Well, I guess this kind of. So this person said sexual energy. So I'm assuming just in general, like what we feel is sexual energy, and like what we, how to cultivate that. I guess that kind of ties into health, but it is what it is. Like for me personally, when I was like really deep into the marketing and e-commerce space, like I would like I wasn't really like sexually active in terms of like partners. I was using a lot of that sexual energy towards my business and towards a lot of the marketing and just like learning, because I've gone through phases where I'm very like intimate, and like I'm having intimate experiences with people, and I realized that it requires sexual energy to be doing that. And when you have that sexual energy, it's really potent, it's really powerful. And so to be able to make sure that you're finding that balance of how you're navigating with that energy, I think is really important, because when I started just focusing all of that into the business, it started like taking off really well. And so for me, it's yeah, it's like just my idea of what sexual energy is the arousal of the masculine. Like the feminine arouses the masculine to go do something. And so
Mm.
that's kind of like the relationship I have with sexual energy. It's like, obviously, we're on semen retention, like that. That's like number one, like like just retain your seed, and you've got like 90% of your issues are pretty much gone in terms of like sexual energy. The other 10% is how you direct that and what you use it towards. Are you using that energy? Are you watching porn when you're doing that? Like what is it that you're directing when you feel aroused, when you're just like horny for life? Like what is it that you're doing? Are you trying to look for a partner? And there's no right or wrong. Like are you like what is it that you
It's your
want to
energy to
use
use.
that energy? Yeah, it's just what like what does it sexual energy mean to you? What makes you aroused? What makes you like horny for life? And feel and really sit with that energy, and then see what you want to do with it. I'm
Yeah,
horny
so I
for
would say
life
like
24.
if you
Facts.
ask me what sexual energy is, I would say it's creative energy. Our
Yeah.
energy that we can use to create anything in our life. And that's pretty wide spectrum. Like sexual energy can be used in any way really. And semen
Mhm.
retention definitely plays a big role in this. But basically like I was talking to Fob the other day, and he said he asked me what I think the cure for horniness is, and I said that it's mastering the sexual energy. So
Mm.
basically, like what I mean by that is like semen retention is not something you just decide to jump into and do. It's something that takes practice. Like you're dealing with a lot of energy when you decide to maintain the seed. You're now having lots of energy inside your body that you're not used to having. So it needs to be channeled somewhere, or it's going to build up and stagnate and eventually find the path of least resistance out of your dick. So you need to make the path of least resistance somewhere else. So that
Mhm.
can be in a creative flow. That can be with a partner practicing tantra with breath awareness. It can look like a lot of things. It's not really anything specific. It can look like starting a garden. It could look like creating a business. It could look like writing a book. It could look like editing videos. It could look like learning how to do a handstand. It can look like fucking anything. But
Mhm.
as long as it doesn't look like sitting on the couch and thinking about how horny you are and looking at pictures of people online, like really that's like not mastering the energy. And over time, like you will still spill seed in the process of learning how to not spill seed. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
like the goal is to kind of learn um how to master it, how to build awareness in where the energy is building up and the channels of energy that, the channels that the energy can flow through. So this is something that I find something that takes lots of time. Like to really master your sexual energy, it realistically takes at least a decade, I would say. I'm about 5 years in and I still have a lot to learn. And I've come a long
Oh yeah.
way.
Yeah, yeah, no
But
doubt.
yeah, and I think the sexual energy topic ties into the question that Ketzel had, asking us to share our perspectives on diet and reproduction. So I think as far as diet goes with reproduction, I think there are options. I think you can do. There's a lot of wiggle room for intuition and for um, I guess intuition is the word. Intuitive eating. That's really what I recommend for women. Like usually the body knows what it wants. So, I usually recommend a lot of like pregnancy preparation. So like pre-pregnancy preparation. Like I'm a big advocate for the man retaining seed for at least 90 days prior to conception. I really recommend like extended fasting prior to conception for both the male and the female. And that's not necessarily fasting, meaning like ketosis. Like you definitely don't need to be in ketosis, but like liquid fasting, like solid food vacation, something like that.
Mhm.
Cleaning out the bowels and cleaning out the body because it's not really the best, at least in my opinion, to detox mid pregnancy while there is a baby in you. Like for the stuff to get out of your body, it has to go through the blood to get out. So that's not something you necessarily want to be putting through the baby on the way out too.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
recommend getting as much of your detox done prior to being pregnant as possible. Of course, if you get pregnant unexpectedly or things like that, it is kind of a gray area. You want to take it easy with the detoxing stuff in that sense. and it might actually be beneficial to either detox very slowly or even to wait until post-pregnancy, because once you fast, then stuff really gets broken up. It's not necessarily always going into the blood and always being transferred to the baby if you have like buildups in a specific area. Like subcutaneous mucus is not really affecting the baby that much compared to like detoxing it out while you have the baby inside of you. So that's just a perspective, just an idea. Um, the animal versus plants thing, I see a balance of both being ideal. I think you can be pregnant on just green juices, and you can fast while you're pregnant if you've already had fasting experience prior to pregnancy. I would never recommend fasting to a mother who's never fasted prior to being pregnant. I would never recommend that. But you can definitely I really like, as far as food goes, anything that really comes from nature. Only a couple things that I would recommend staying away from is fast breathing, breath of fire, breathing machine breaths, any sympathetic nervous system breath work. I definitely wouldn't really recommend for pregnant women. And that's because as you breathe faster, you are starving the organs of blood and sending the blood to the muscles and tissues more so. So you're basically like starving the baby, or starving that, the core of the blood
Mm,
for a period of time, which just, there's a time and place for that. And while you're pregnant really isn't the time or place for that. I would really more so recommend parasympathetic breathing for pregnant women. And then as far as diet goes, basically like anything raw from nature. If it's cooked foods, I mean, very specific things. I would say if you wanted to cook like egg whites or certain things, like I don't really have too much experience to say, but I mean, if people are looking to do cooked foods, I would say like very minimal cooked foods and mostly raw, if anything. Um,
mm,
and I mean, you got to be realistic with people. Not everyone's ready to completely change their lifestyle when they get pregnant by accident. So, like, if you're preparing for pregnancy and you have like, a partner and you guys are ready to consciously go into this process and start preparing a year out in advance, that's really ideal. But that's not everyone's situation. So, depending on where you're at, you have a lot more leeway to make change and to optimize things prior. But if you're already pregnant, then there's a lot less room for change because you don't want to make any radical changes while you're pregnant. So that would be, if you are already pregnant, I would say that would look like maybe incorporating just more local foods and less like processed stuff. So like if you are standard American diet and you're pregnant, I would definitely recommend just going more towards like the denser stuff that is natural. So that could look like raw meat, that could look like eggs, that could look like, um, milk. Those things will not allow as much detox as, let's say, a green juice fast or going, on all fruit. It's a more drastic, like more detoxing type transition, which could be stressful. And really, I would say overall, just be intuitive. That's like the number one thing I would say for anyone. I would say be intuitive and go with what feels right. Your body knows what it wants. If you're pregnant and you're craving salt, by all means, fucking go for it. But notice the difference between cravings that are like enjoyment cravings. Like I crave the taste of this, worth like I feel like my body wants this. There's a difference. Like craving a
mm.
Rice Krispie treat is different than like feeling like you need carbs, like from fruit or something. So like there is definitely a difference. And just being aware. Like everything I recommend, awareness. Do everything you do with conscious awareness, and your body will lead you where you need to go and teach you what you want to know. You want to add anything to that, Rob? Or
I
say
mean, you
anything
pretty,
different?
yeah, I mean, pretty much along the lines too. I think a lot of it with reproduction is energy too. So making sure that you and your partner are in alignment with what you want to create into this world, because the energy that you're putting into um, the whole reproductive process is the energy that your child is going to embody. So making sure that you're engaging in sexual activities with someone that you can see yourself um, being with and raising the child. So that's more so on like an energetic level. It's not necessarily on a diet level. I agree with what you were saying with all of that too. Yeah, that's what I would. That's kind of what I would say on that topic.
Word. Yeah, one
Trying
more
to
thing I
see.
want to add too is like, I've been working with lots of clients for a pretty long time now, and I've
Mm,
seen people thrive on different things. Personally, I haven't had too many clients that are on the whole carnivore like meat eating wave, so I can't really say too much from that. But obviously, there are lots of women who eat like meat and raw meat and still have healthy babies. So I would say, like from my experience, I can't really speak on that. But there's people who have healthy babies and unhealthy babies eating meat, so we'll see. Depends on, I guess, the context and where they're sourcing and things like that. Meat isn't just meat, obviously. So um, from my perspective, like I've been a big advocate for fasting and, breath work and that type of stuff. Like I've had clients that are I used to do like a 9-week one-on-one breath work program where I would teach like on Zoom personally one-on-one with everyone. And I had a couple clients that, it's a common thing. We could talk about menstruation in a whole different podcast episode or like, a whole different course, about menstruation and, the whole female stuff. But, I've had clients that weren't bleeding, that weren't menstruating, that still got pregnant while they were taking my program and ended up fasting throughout most of their pregnancy and actually still had like beautiful, healthy babies that actually were like super smart as young kids. Like they followed up with me and been like, oh, like he's reading and he's only like 1.5. And like, he can, like being ahead of their time as far as like, intellectual things go. So I think that's interesting, but really I think that's possible with just any kind of natural diet as long as it's coming from nature and it's like majority raw food. I think kids have the potential to be really smart. And also, I don't advocate for feeding your child anything other than breast milk for the first like 5 years of life, unless they are just trying to taste. So like your kids will want to do what you do, so they will like reach for things that you're eating or want something that you're eating because they want to do what you do. So in that sense, I would just recommend giving them small amounts of something. Give them like one berry, give them like a little piece of melon, just so they can get like the taste of it without like filling them up. Don't feed your infant to fill them. Just allow them to experience with the taste and texture. That's really the only time I would feed a kid anything other than breast milk, as they're growing up. And then after, you know, really like when the mother stops producing milk. So that's usually like 5 to 7 years. If it's earlier than that, it's earlier than that. If it's longer than that, it's longer than that. But as long as the mother produces milk, it's still an option. And honestly, like a child will decide that it doesn't want milk anymore too. Like in nature, that's what happens. The child doesn't want to. Like the guy who owned the farm that I held the festival at, Jeremy, like his goats will, he's a grown man. This goat is he's ready to mate, and he still drinks his mom's milk sometimes. Like he goes over there and grabs milk. And some species, I would say women, like human women, could be included in this potentially. Like even after the baby decides to stop drinking milk on their own, the mother can still continue to produce milk. And that is kind of like the idea of like giving milk to loved ones or giving milk to other people that they feel need it. It is like a motherly instinct to share that nourishment with other people or with other things. So this is like why you'll see animals in nature sharing their milk with other animals, other adult animals or other children animals after the fact, after their child is already done. As far as UT goes, somebody asked about children's diet and fasting in UT. I would definitely start children out on just like raw food, like, after they get off breast milk, like definitely just like fruits, the gentle, like more watery stuff. So like raw eggs are cool. Raw milk is cool. Fruits are obviously cool. Things like that in very, very small amounts. Like they need a lot less than we think they do because we've been conditioned to eat a lot more than them. It will take them time to build up to eating more food. And UT is something that, like, I mean, I'm definitely not planning on making my kid drink his pee when he's 4 years old. Like, it's kind of going to be something that, like, my kids will see me do it and then eventually learn to do it. Not something that I'm necessarily going to, like, tell them to do or make them do. Like, if they're curious and they ask about it, then, like, that's it. Yeah. And when it comes to, like, your kids eating, like, let them, yeah, Aubrey just said it, like, took the words out of my mouth. Like, let your kid be intuitive, too. So, like, they know what they want and they know what they don't want. If they want something, give them the opportunity to experience it and learn for themselves whether they want it again or not. And same thing, like if they don't want something, like respecting that your kid isn't hungry is huge. Much love, Ketzel. Good question. Like, thank you for, creating the space for us to talk about this topic because I think it is very important. I would love to hear your perspective on that too, Ketzel, honestly, at some point.
I'm trying to see what else. Let me see if there's other ones. I feel like
see if there's any good, if there's other good ones. I mean, we're already going on about 2 hours here.
Yeah.
But I mean,
or like
I'll stay on for a little.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really have much until.
If you want, send me some screenshots of your questions and I'll look at them, or just go over like a bunch of them and we can just pick one, like read like 5 or 6 and we can just pick one.
Yeah. A lot of it we kind of already answered. They're just saying like, there's semen retention, best foods for the liver. Best foods for the liver, I guess we can go into that. How how to handle those intense emotional purges. I'm assuming this person's talking about, when you go through, your fasting experiences, you do go through some gnarly emotional experiences. And I guess one way that I handle that is just acceptance and like finding peace with whatever is being purged, because and like accepting that it's being released, because it's easy to get caught up in the emotional purges and think it's going to stay there forever, but finding peace in knowing that it's here right now, but it will be released, and it's only here right now because it's coming out to the surface, and it's going to be just released out, and whatever that looks like, just finding peace with that. That's like my biggest advice. I guess if you want to know like physically like what to do, being in like for me, what's
Safe
helped is
space.
being in like really really warm, like wrapping myself in a blanket, or like emanating the womb. So like going
Beautiful.
in a bath as well, something like that. You could do an Epsom salt bath. That definitely helps me. I don't know what your go-to.
Magnesium salts. I'm about it.
For
Through the
sure.
skin. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
exactly. That's been like huge for me too, just alleviating that stress.
Yeah.
Really
I
helps me.
would say another thing for me personally when it comes to emotional stuff, or what I recommend for people, like when it comes to these big releases, is like find a safe space. Like
Hmm.
there's a time and place to know that you're safe to do it. Being at the mall is not the time. Find a space home, like in your house, in your room, like where like you can be loud and you can be obnoxiously like letting it loose and not hold back at all. And I've really noticed for myself that like I have trouble really allowing the release when there's like people or energy around that prevents me from feeling like safe to release. So part of it is like allowing yourself to be in a position whether that is an Epsom salt bath or curl up in a ball with a blanket or like whatever it is that allows you to feel safe to totally let it out.
Hmm. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, just knowing that you are safe. That's the biggest thing. Like reassuring yourself, and sometimes even having someone just tell you, like reach out and just have someone tell you you're going to be okay. That's a big thing too.
Yeah.
Just hearing that, and letting people know that like, hey, if I start getting a certain way, just tell me it's going to be okay, because it's always nice to have a reflection kind of reassure you of that. Do not go on social media. So I mean,
That's honestly
yeah,
pretty good
that's
advice,
true.
honestly, Fab. From your experience, definitely I could see that. Like venting on social media is not it.
Yeah,
I mean, if you
yeah.
want to do it, do it. It's just in my
Learn from the
experience, I would say like
contrast.
it's not. Yeah, learn from the contrast on that one. There is a question that I want to address from the chat here.
Yeah.
People talk about different diets for conceiving boy versus girl, and wondering if that's legit. What I would say is I have no idea because I haven't been pregnant and had
Mhm.
both a boy and a girl and seen different things. But I would say like whatever the body needs for that, if it is different, then the cravings will be different, or not necessarily cravings, but like the bodily desires, what the body tells you want is going to be different, maybe, if the difference is necessary. If there is a difference between boy versus girl, maybe that could eventually be a way to tell if it's a boy or girl. But usually like the mother can consciously decide the gender of the child with intention.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Aubrey just said the same thing. I was going to
Yeah,
say
I wouldn't.
you'll feel different whether it's a boy or a girl. I would be interested to talk to a mother with multiple children, like who has like, I mean, I guess I can ask my mom, but I mean any mother who has both
Yeah.
boys and girls, to see like if the pregnancy was like totally like a different feeling, like where they kind
Hmm.
of knew it was a boy or a girl.
I didn't
I'm
know you
pretty
had
sure my mom was
siblings.
pretty on point with guessing.
I'm just looking
Yeah,
through. I
and
sent
definitely like
you
talking to
some
somebody.
screenshots, by the way.
Oh,
I
word.
texted it to you. You can check that out. But yeah, like I said, pretty much all of it we kind of went over without even need to go through the questions. Someone asked about
Oh
crypto.
wow, one
Yeah,
person asked
I'm still
a
in the
lot of
space.
questions.
Yeah, yeah. I just sent like some of them because it's just like it was kind of repeated. But yeah, I mean, in terms of crypto, yeah, I'm still in it. I'm not. I'm so for me, like I've always said, it's just another tool to build abundance. I'm not really in it for the tech. I'm not really interested in anything digital too much. the metaverse, all of that stuff. I see the direction in which this timeline right now is headed in, and so I'm profiting off of that. And if you're asking about like what I think the current state is with what's going on in the world right now, I don't see new all-time highs in the crypto market anytime soon. I think it's going to take a pretty nasty dip. Um, if you're trying to get into that space, I would learn more about Web3, DeFi, yield farming, um, those topics. You could try. The thing with NFTs is it goes beyond just pictures on a screen. You want to find projects that have good utility and good tokenomics, because for instance, you could get in early on an NFT project that the NFT is basically a pass, and that pass will give you access to certain areas. And there's a project that's actually looking to buy a city, and so if you own that NFT, you become a citizen of that particular town. So there, you definitely, if you're looking to profit off of it, you want something that's long term, something that has utility and use case. If you're just trading pictures of JPEGs, I mean, good luck. there's just, it's too saturated right now. So my best advice would be to really look into NFT projects that have use case, so you can actually do something with the NFTs you own. Yeah. I don't know if you saw anything that you wanted to answer on there.
Something in the comments just on the live right now about breastfeeding and fasting. Postpartum is the time to feast. So regardless of whether or not you're fasting during pregnancy, like when you're breastfeeding, that's the time to eat, or at least to like consume lots of liquids. If you are going to do like a solid food vacation, it shouldn't be a fast, it should be a feast. Like no juice fasting, juice feasting if you're going to do juice. Or if you're going to do like milk, like, consume things. Because I mean, if you really think about it, like eating is breath work. You're consuming the breath of whatever you're eating. So, you're eating foods for breath content. So consuming things that are high in breath, is ideal, like for breastfeeding especially. And I mean, let me see. Yeah. So how about breatharians' moms? Did they feast on air or what? So I mean, personally, I don't know any breatharian mothers like who have been breatharian through the entire thing. The only women that I've helped with fasting throughout, pregnancy and postpartum, whatever, they were always like consuming lots of liquids. They were on like all the women that were on liquids, they weren't reducing. Like they weren't like really trying to not have lots of water and go into the breatharian state. They weren't dry fasting. It was always just high liquid, which I do think is optimal. Um, whether that, I think honestly postpartum, like raw milk and juices is like phenomenal combo. Maybe not always together at the same exact time, but throughout the day or like throughout like the week, a consistent amount of both of those, getting the fats in and, lots of juice and minerals and salts and stuff like that is definitely beneficial, I would say.
Yeah, I'm actually learning a lot about just from reading this chat about um, all of this, because
Yeah, Aubrey's
looks
got
like
good
Asia.
info.
Yeah, nice. Looks like someone went fruit diet for a week and a week juicing, and it wiped out nearly all the milk. Wow, I would not have guessed that, but that's good to know.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that either. That is pretty interesting. Yeah, I would say like especially like if you're not used to eating those diets, like again, pre-pregnancy is the time to make those changes, not really right at like during or after, like right after. But if you are gonna switch to those things, I would say like you should be eating a lot if you're making a serious change, postpartum at least.
Fennel,
Fennel juice is
nice.
fire too.
Like fennel juice, like you grind up the fennel seeds, or like how do you make fennel juice?
I don't know. Ask Aubrey. She was making fennel juice for us in Hawaii, and the shit was dank.
Yeah, fennel's got like a pretty like almost like a minty taste.
I think it's got like leaves, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, like the fennel leaves.
Yeah, I think the leaves or the
Mm,
bulbs, like some the part of it.
the whole fennel. I see. Nice.
Yeah, the recipe: fennel, basil, cucumber, green apple. Fire.
Licorice. Nice. Licorice. I'm trying to
Oh, said
look.
you juiced the whole thing. Yeah, it was definitely good. Yeah, Akahi, Ricardo, and Camila. That's interesting. I learned a fair amount from them back in the day. I don't really know about them because they don't like, they say the word breatharian, but they don't look like they're doing too much extended fasting. Like they're not super lean and they're not super like, they both look like they're in decent shape, but I wouldn't say they both look like they're in the breatharian state.
Well, I don't even know who they are. Are they just
I
who
know
is
they're
that?
like a couple who like I learned like how to host like emotional trauma sessions from them back in the day.
Huh. Nice.
They're like their breath work coach, like they call it their breatharian healing program, which is just
Yeah.
like guiding breath work emotional sessions.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the whole label with breatharian too. I feel like people are just like, oh, they don't eat or consume anything, which like I guess is the standard definition. But for me, it's like breatharian means just getting energy from breath. It doesn't mean you're only being
I mean,
energized on the breath.
you're consuming more air than anything else all day. Think about the
Yeah.
volume of air that goes into your body every day compared to the volume of anything else.
Yeah. I mean, we're all breatharian, like
Definitely.
at least, fluctuating between like we're just here. I don't know. We're just here having this human experience, and we're just fueling ourselves with different things, whether that's energy, music, electricity, whatever it is. Yeah, I'm trying to find. Okay, so it doesn't look more on
Yeah.
here.
So on the screen, anybody who has additional questions, you can like about pregnancy or the menstruation stuff. You can email us or pretty much questions about like whatever. You can email us at info@thecaputomethod.com.
I don't know.
So
I
yeah, I
mean,
mean
do
at
you
this
see?
point we could kind of just talk about whatever, or
Yeah,
we can go into the questions. I feel like none of these questions really lit me up that much. Most of them we already talked about. All the ones that I
yeah,
liked.
yeah, exactly. Well, oh, there was one question on here, like, where do you see yourself living? That's a powerful question because words are spells, and you might end up spell casting some crazy stuff. But yeah, I mean, for me, like personally, I'm not. So for me, like the prayer is always sovereignty, however that looks like. I'm not caught up with what the path looks like. I know what I want, and I know it's sovereignty on all levels of activity. And so, what that looks like and where I end up going, I'm not necessarily too concerned with. I do want to go to different places, and I've already set the intention to do so. I've been just crazy busy. 2021 was just on the move, on the go. So I haven't been traveling as much as I have been before, but I do plan on going to Hawaii and some other places that just have some tropical land. It's definitely gonna have to be like Costa Rica, just somewhere really tropical. Because my intention is to
Tropics is
just
where it's at.
yeah exactly. My intent like I'm not like even though I am consuming the raw milk right now and like the bone marrow and stuff like that, I don't always plan on doing that. I like
Yeah, I
my
mean you could still do that shit in the tropics.
what yeah
There's still goats in Hawaii. I had my goat milk for the first time in Hawaii.
nice
So
yeah
I mean,
for me it's just
you
like
could find balance on both if you wanted to. The tropics is the place where you have all of the options.
yeah that's the thing too. My biggest thing is weather. I just don't think we're designed for winter, honestly. I don't know, that's just me
My
personally.
body don't
I
like the winter. It don't like
Not
it.
at all. Not at all. And I always feel the best when I'm out in the sun all the time. Um, and here it's a little rough. Let's meet in Florida
Yeah,
next
I
month.
would
Yeah,
say
if it
another
aligns,
thing for
definitely.
moving, like where do I see myself? I don't really see myself settling in one place. Like I don't know if I ever see myself settling in one place.
Mhm.
Energy likes to move. I like to move. I don't like to stay in the same
Yeah.
place. I feel like I stagnate when I'm anywhere for more than a couple months at a time. I'm like, I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Mm.
So that's just the way that I've been for the last couple years, and the way that like I really don't see myself ever like changing on that. I really do like moving.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I hate traveling on planes, so I mean, I would definitely prefer to find some way to like fly private or do something else
Hot air
in the
balloon.
future. Get like a yacht or something. Yeah, yeah, hot air balloon or like a blimp.
Right.
Um, something like that. Yeah, I mean, animals migrate, birds
Yeah.
migrate, villages move. Like, yeah, totally, Aubrey.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's there's no stagnation. And I mean, this is a big thing with society and what we do. Like, we tend to stay in one spot and then suck the resources out of it and then go to other places to steal the resources
Hmm.
from there to go bring the resources back to the place we already depleted. And like, it just doesn't make any sense. Um, so yeah, I mean, the migration is key for me. I also like to switch up diets and switch up things. You know, like to be here and be on the raw dairy in the winter, and then go down to Nicaragua for a couple months and eat fruit, and go to Costa Rica and go wherever and like get their different foods and their different things. Like there's different fruits in Nicaragua than Costa Rica. There's totally different climates.
Hmm.
Even just like you could be in the tropics, but the tropics has a lot of variety too. You could be in Southeast Asia and be in tropical environment, and it could be totally different. There's durian everywhere and like jackfruit compared to like the mangoes and the watermelon and the papayas in
Hmm.
the Caribbean, or in Central America. So I mean, it's different depending on where you are, and I really see myself going all over. I also think that traveling kind of accelerates learning. You see the way that people do life differently in different areas of the world. I've learned a lot from people in different countries that I've been to, in different places where I've lived, and places that I've visited. People do things differently everywhere, and it's really cool to see that and to kind of compile all of that experience and kind of tie it into what works best for you, I think. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, is Cape Verde in Africa, Fab? I'd be down for that shit. Africa's on the
For
bucket
real.
list. Yeah,
For real. Travel on foot. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like that's what we had to do at one point.
I think horses are cool too.
Yeah. I've never, I mean, I think I did when I was like 6. I rode it on one of those circle things, whatever
I'm
it's
way
called.
more over dirt bikes these days.
Yeah, no
For
doubt. No
obvious
doubt.
reasons.
Yeah.
My foot and whatnot. Yeah, that's Fab's home country. Yeah, that could be cool, Fab. We could talk about that one day in the future.
Right. That ass donkeys.
Yeah,
I've
so
never
I
ridden a
mean,
donkey either.
anything else you want to talk about?
I think we pretty much covered everything that we wanted to, especially like with the social media versus reality thing.
I think so too. I
Yeah.
think we're pretty
I- I'm
straight, honestly.
I'm pretty straight too. I mean, we could definitely hop on another one, like do a live. I can go on my Humanity Enlightened one, and we'll chop it up on there. And if people have more questions, feel free to shoot either
Or
one
we
of
could
us a
do like an
DM.
IG live. We could see if they let me, and we could do that and like do like a Q&A on there or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Just to
that'll
like fuck
probably
around and have fun. Like the podcast is pretty much we did it. So everything
yeah,
else we can kind of just go
for
fuck
sure.
around if you're still feeling it. I'm with that.
For
All
sure.
right. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Rob, for coming on here. Glad we finally got to do this episode. And I think this topic was really good. I hope everybody enjoyed listening. And we'll see you on the next episode. This is the Grow from the Garden podcast. I am Nick Caputo here with Rob, Raw Being of Light. You can follow his Instagram, Raw Being of Light. Rob, anything else? Anything you're offering that you want to share information about, or where can we find you? Where can we learn more from you? Dive
Hmm.
deeper.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure to be here chopping it up with you.
No doubt, bro.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, Robbie of Light. You can also follow my business account, Humanity Enlightened. On that account, I'm kind of collaborating with different people. If you have offerings or services or products, and it's in alignment, we can see how we can promote that on that page. You can also go on my link tree, which is just linktree/human or Raw Being of Light. I also have a link tree /Humanity Enlightened as well that you can check out.
All right. Thank you, Rob, for sharing that. I'll put that up on here too, just so everyone can see. Enlightened. Okay. There it is. And that's the same spelling for the Instagram, correct?
Correct. Yep.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, again. We got 4 more episodes left for season 1 of this podcast. So if you have any recommendations or requests for who I should bring on for these last 4 episodes, you can feel free to send me a message or DM me, or maybe I'll do like a story on Instagram and let people make suggestions. So yeah, much love, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.